When the rain stopped on the third night, Lena Park thought she had finally escaped, until she realized someone had been watching her all along. A single spilled cup, a bleeding hand, and a stranger who stepped out of the shadows with eyes that already knew her name, her debts, her nightmares. Victor Romano wasn't offering help. He was claiming what he believed was already his. This is a story of obsession, survival, and the dangerous line between captivity and salvation. If you want to see how far this story reaches, hit that like button and comment your city below. Now, let's begin. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, not the gentle kind that whispered against windows or made puddles shimmer under streetlights. This was the brutal, relentless kind, the kind that turned alleys into rivers and soaked through clothes in seconds, leaving you shivering and raw. The kind that made the city feel like it was drowning. Lena Park stood behind the counter of Miller's Bakery, her hands trembling as she wiped down the same spot for the third time. The white towel came away pink. She'd cut her palm earlier on a broken mug, but she hadn't had time to bandage it properly. Mrs. Miller didn't like when employees stopped working for minor inconveniences. The clock on the wall read 9:47 p.m. 13 more minutes until closing. 13 more minutes until she could stumble back to the apartment she shared with her aunt. If you could even call it sharing. More like existing in the same suffocating space, breathing the same stale air thick with resentment and unpaid bills. You planning to stand there all night, or are you going to finish mopping? Lena flinched. Mrs. Miller's voice had that razor-edge quality that made your shoulders tense automatically. The older woman stood in the doorway to the kitchen, arms crossed, her face set in its usual expression of deep dissatisfaction with the universe and Lena's place in it. "Yes, ma'am. Sorry." Lena grabbed the mop from its corner, ignoring the fresh throb of pain in her cut hand. The cheap linoleum floor was already clean. She'd mopped it twice, but arguing was pointless. Arguing only made things worse. She pushed the mop across the floor in methodical strokes, keeping her head down, making herself small. That was the trick to survival, she'd learned. Be quiet. Be invisible. Don't give anyone a reason to notice you, because when they noticed you, that's when the trouble started. The bell above the door chimed. Lena looked up, ready to inform the late customer that they were closing, but the words died in her throat. 3 men stood in the doorway, rain dripping from their expensive coats onto her freshly mopped floor. They had the kind of presence that made the small bakery feel even smaller, like they'd brought the weight of something dangerous in with them. The one in front was older, maybe 40, with graying temples and cold eyes that swept the room with calculated precision. The 2 behind him were younger, broader, with the kind of build that suggested they spent more time breaking things than baking them. "We're closed," Mrs. Miller said, but her voice had lost its edge. She sounded nervous. "Are you?" The older man's tone was conversational, almost pleasant. He stepped further inside, his shoes leaving wet prints on Lena's clean floor. "That's unfortunate. We were hoping for some of your famous sourdough." Nobody came to Miller's Bakery for famous anything. The bread was mediocre at best, the pastries worse. People came because it was cheap and open late. "We're out of sourdough." Mrs. Miller's hand moved to the phone behind the counter. "You'll have to come back tomorrow." "I don't think we will." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "See, we're not really here for bread. We're here about a debt." Lena's stomach dropped. She knew about debts. She'd been drowning in her aunt's debts since she was 14, since her parents died and left her with nothing but a spare bedroom in her aunt's crumbling apartment and a future that looked like a prison sentence. Her aunt gambled, borrowed from the wrong people, made promises she couldn't keep, and signed Lena's name to agreements Lena never saw until it was too late. But this wasn't about her aunt's debts. Lena could tell by the way Mrs. Miller's face had gone pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mrs. Miller said, but her voice shook. "Your husband borrowed $30,000 from Mr. Chen last year. The payment was due 3 weeks ago." The man pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket and set it on the counter with deliberate care. "With interest, it's now $42,000. We're here to collect." "My husband's dead." "Yes. Heart attack, wasn't it?" "Unfortunate." The man's expression didn't change. "But the debt doesn't die with him. You inherited the business. You inherited the debt." Lena stood frozen, mop handle gripped tight in her hands. She should leave. This wasn't her problem, but her feet wouldn't move. "I don't have that kind of money," Mrs. Miller said. "Then we'll take the bakery." "The bakery's not worth half that." "We know." The man gestured to one of his companions. "Which is why we'll be taking additional assets, equipment, inventory, and—" his gaze slid to Lena. "Collateral." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. "She's got nothing to do with this," Mrs. Miller said quickly. Too quickly. The man's smile widened. "No? Then why did your husband list her as a guarantor?" The world tilted. "What?" Lena's voice came out small, strangled. "You didn't know?" The man pulled out another document. "Lena Park, age 18, employed at Miller's Bakery since age 16, signed as guarantor on a loan dated 18 months ago." He looked at her with something like pity. "You should really read things before you sign them." I didn't sign anything." But even as she said it, she remembered. Remembered Mrs. Miller handing her a stack of papers during her first week, telling her it was just standard employment paperwork. Insurance forms, tax documents, employee agreements. Lena had been so desperate for the job, so grateful for the money, that she'd signed everything without reading, her hand cramping as she scrawled her name across line after line. "This isn't legal," Mrs. Miller said, but she wouldn't meet Lena's eyes. She was a minor. She was 16, old enough to work, old enough to sign. "We have everything documented." The man folded the paper and tucked it away. "So here's how this works. You have 72 hours to pay the full amount, or we start collecting. The bakery, your home, and—" He looked at Lena again. "Her. What does that mean?" Lena's voice barely made it past her lips. "What do you mean, collect?" The man didn't answer her. He just turned and walked back toward the door, his companions following. 72 hours, he said, without looking back. "We'll be in touch." The door closed, the bell chimed, the rain continued to fall. Lena stood in the middle of the bakery, mop still in hand, trying to breathe through the crushing weight on her chest. "You knew!" Her voice came out flat, dead. "You knew you signed my name." Mrs. Miller finally looked at her, and there was guilt there, yes, but also a hard defensive anger. "You think I had a choice? You think I wanted any of this?" "I was 16. You needed a job. You lied to me. I gave you work when no one else would." Mrs. Miller's voice rose, sharp and brittle. "You think anyone else was going to hire some orphan kid with no experience? You should be grateful." Grateful. The word came out like broken glass. "You forged my signature on a loan and now I'm—" "What? What happens if you can't pay?" Mrs. Miller looked away. "Figure it out yourself," she said coldly. "You're smart. You'll survive. You always do." She disappeared into the back room, leaving Lena alone with the rain and the silence and the documents that had just turned her life into collateral. Lena didn't go home. She walked instead, letting the rain soak through her thin jacket, letting the cold seep into her bones. The streets were mostly empty at this hour, just the occasional car splashing through puddles and the distant sound of sirens. $42,000. She didn't have $42, let alone $42,000. Her aunt would laugh, or cry, or rage, or all three at once, and then tell Lena it was her own fault for being stupid enough to sign something without reading it. Never mind that Lena had been desperate, alone, grieving. Never mind that she'd trusted Mrs. Miller because she'd had no one else to trust. The apartment building loomed ahead, 6 stories of crumbling brick and broken dreams. Lena climbed the stairs slowly, her shoes squelching with each step, leaving wet footprints on the stained carpet. The apartment was dark when she opened the door. Her aunt was either passed out drunk or hadn't come home yet. Both were equally likely. Lena peeled off her soaked jacket and hung it on the hook by the door, then stood in the middle of the small living room, dripping onto the warped hardwood floor. She should eat something. She'd skipped lunch to save money, and breakfast had been a piece of stale bread. But the thought of food made her stomach turn. Instead, she walked to her room, the tiny space that had once been a storage closet, barely big enough for a mattress on the floor and a plastic dresser, and sat down on the edge of the mattress, staring at the water-stained wall. 3 days ago, she'd turned 18. No cake, no candles, no celebration. Just another shift at the bakery, another night in this apartment, another day of being invisible. She'd thought things might get better after 18. Thought maybe she could save enough to get her own place, put herself through community college, build something that wasn't just survival. Now she didn't even have survival. Lena lay back on the mattress and closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. How could it? Every time she started to drift, she saw that man's cold eyes, heard his voice saying collateral, felt the weight of $42,000 crushing her chest. The rain hammered against the window like it was trying to break through. The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. Lena dragged herself out of bed at 6, pulled on her least damp clothes, and headed to the bakery. She didn't know what else to do. Mrs. Miller might fire her, probably would fire her, now that everything was falling apart. But until then, she still needed the money, still needed the routine, the structure, the illusion that her life had purpose. The streets were quieter after the rain, the city washed clean in that temporary way that never lasted. Puddles reflected the gray sky. Steam rose from grates. Somewhere, a radio played soft jazz. Lena pushed open the bakery door at 6:30 a.m. sharp, expecting to find Mrs. Miller in the kitchen prepping the morning pastries with her usual grim efficiency. Instead, she found chaos. The bakery had been ransacked. Chairs overturned, glass cases shattered, flour and sugar spilled across the floor like snow. The register sat open and empty, its drawer hanging loose. The walls bore streaks of something dark, chocolate syrup, Lena hoped, though part of her knew better. Mrs. Miller? No answer. Lena picked her way through the destruction, her heart in her throat, half expecting to find Mrs. Miller's body behind the counter. But the back room was empty too, though it had received the same treatment. Supplies destroyed, equipment broken, everything valuable stripped away. On the counter, held down by a bag of ruined flour, was a note. 71 hours remaining. Lena's hands shook as she picked up the note. The paper was expensive, the handwriting precise. This wasn't a warning scrawled in rage. This was calculated. Professional. This was a message. She should call the police. She should... Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Unknown number. Lena stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the decline button. But something made her answer. Maybe desperation. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the same instinct that made you look at a car crash even when you knew you shouldn't. Hello? Silence. Then a voice, deep, measured, with an accent she couldn't place. Lena Park. Not a question, a statement. Who is this? Someone who can help you. A pause. If you want to be helped. I didn't do anything. This isn't my debt. I know. Then why are you calling me? Because what happened to the bakery last night is only the beginning. In 71 hours, Chen's men will come for you directly. They will take everything you have, which, admittedly, isn't much, and then they will take you. Lena's legs felt weak. She leaned against the counter, trying to breathe through the panic clawing at her chest. What do you want? To make you an offer. I don't have any money. I'm not asking for money. The voice was almost gentle now, which somehow made it worse. I'm asking you to trust me. I don't even know who you are. My name is Victor Romano, and I've been watching you for a very long time, Lena. The phone slipped from her hand. It clattered onto the flour-dusted floor, the voice still speaking, but Lena couldn't hear it over the roar of blood in her ears. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name, even if they pretended not to. Victor Romano, the youngest head of the Romano family in 3 generations. A man whose name was whispered in back rooms and dark alleys, who controlled half the city's underground with an iron fist wrapped in expensive suits. A man who made people disappear. Lena scrambled for the phone, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it again. Are you still there? Victor's voice was calm, patient. Don't come near me. I'll call the police. The police can't help you. Chen's operation runs too deep. You call them, they'll take a report, maybe send a patrol car by once or twice. And then, when the 72 hours are up, Chen's men will come anyway, because the police can't protect you. They won't even try. And you will? Lena's laugh was bitter, broken. Why would you? I'm nobody. That's where you're wrong. Something shifted in his tone, something dark and possessive that made her skin prickle. You've never been nobody. Not to me. That doesn't make any sense. We've never met. I know everything about you, Lena Park. I know you take the same route to work every morning, that you stop at the corner store on Tuesdays for bread because it's 2 cents cheaper. I know your aunt drinks vodka from a coffee mug and pretends it's water. I know you save every spare dollar in a coffee can under your mattress, and right now there's exactly $247.63 in it. I know you cut your hand yesterday on a broken mug, and Mrs. Miller wouldn't let you stop to bandage it properly. I know— Stop. Lena's voice cracked. Just stop. Silence. Then— I'm not trying to frighten you. Well, you're doing a great job anyway. I'm trying to help you. By stalking me? By protecting you. I've been keeping Chen's people away from you for months. Every time they came close, every time they started asking questions about Miller's guarantors, I redirected them. But now things have escalated beyond my ability to interfere quietly. If I don't act directly, they will take you. And once they have you, I won't be able to get you back without starting a war. So start a war. The words came out harsh, desperate. If you're so powerful, if you care so much, just fix this. Pay off the debt. Make them go away. That won't solve the problem. Chen will just find another excuse, another angle. He's been circling the bakery for years, and now he's found his opening. Even if I pay this debt, there will be another. And another. Until he gets what he wants. Which is? Territory. Miller's Bakery sits on a corner lot that Chen needs for expansion. He wants the building. He wants the land. He'll bleed Mrs. Miller dry until she has no choice but to sell. And he'll use you as leverage to make sure she does. Lena closed her eyes. Of course, it was never really about the debt. It was never really about her. She was just a convenient tool. A pressure point to be exploited. So what's your offer? Her voice came out flat, exhausted. What do you want from me? I want you to leave with me. Right now. Let me take you somewhere safe. And then what? What? Your prisoner? My guest, Victor interrupted, and there was steel beneath the gentleness now. My responsibility, He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. Protected. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now. In 71 hours, Chen's men will come for you. You can be here when they arrive, or you can be with me. Those are your options. That's not a choice. No, Victor agreed quietly. It's not, but it's the reality you're living in. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell, that she'd figure something out on her own, that she didn't need some crime lord swooping in to save her. But the words wouldn't come, because he was right. She had no options, no money, no leverage, no way out. Just 2 bad choices, and she had to pick one. If I go with you, she said slowly, what happens to Mrs. Miller? Mrs. Miller made her choices. She's not your responsibility. She'll lose everything. She lost everything the moment her husband signed that loan. This is just the reckoning. That's cold. That's business. A pause. But if it matters to you, I'll make sure she gets a fair price for the building when Chen forces the sale. More than he was planning to offer. That's the best I can do. It wasn't enough, but it was something. And right now, something was more than Lena had any right to expect. Where are you? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Outside. Lena's blood ran cold. What? I've been outside since you arrived. I wanted to make sure you were safe. She ran to the front window, peering through the shattered glass. And there, parked across the street, was a black car, sleek, expensive, the kind of car that didn't belong in this neighborhood. She couldn't see through the tinted windows, but she knew he was in there, watching. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. He sounded almost amused. But I'm also the only person standing between you and Chen's men. So, are you coming? Lena looked around the destroyed bakery, at the flour and sugar mixed with broken glass, at the overturned chairs and empty register, at the life she'd been clinging to, now shattered beyond repair. She thought about her aunt's apartment, about the mattress on the floor, and the $247.63 hidden in a coffee can, about Mrs. Miller who'd used her, and Chen's men who wanted to collect her like a debt. About being invisible for so long that the first person who truly saw her was a crime lord who'd been watching from the shadows. It should have terrified her. It did terrify her. But beneath the terror was something else, something that felt dangerously like relief. "I need to get my things," she said finally. "I'll take you." Victor's voice was gentle again, careful, like he was talking to something wild that might bolt. "We'll go to your apartment together. You'll pack whatever you need. And then I'm taking you home." "That's not my home." "It will be." Lena didn't have an answer for that. She just walked to the door on shaking legs, stepped out into the cool morning air, and watched as the black car's passenger door opened. She'd made her choice. Now she just had to live with it. What? The car was warm, leather interior soft against her damp clothes. Lena sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, not looking at the driver, not looking at Victor. She'd expected someone older, harder. Chen's men had looked like what they were, thugs in expensive suits, muscle pretending at sophistication. But Victor was different. He was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and darker eyes, and a face that should have been beautiful except for the coldness in his expression. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Lena had made in the past year, and he handled the steering wheel with the kind of casual confidence that suggested he was used to controlling things: cars, businesses, people. "Your hand," he said quietly, glancing at her. "You're bleeding." Lena looked down. The cut had reopened, blood seeping through the makeshift bandage she'd wrapped around it yesterday. She'd forgotten about it entirely. "It's fine." "It's not." He reached across the console, opening the glove compartment to reveal a first aid kit. Not the cheap kind you bought at a drugstore, but the professional kind with antiseptic and proper gauze and surgical tape. "Let me see." "I can do it myself." "I know you can." His voice was still gentle, but there was something underneath it, something that suggested he wasn't asking. "But you don't have to." Lena stared at the first aid kit, then at Victor's extended hand, and felt something crack in her chest. When was the last time someone had offered to help her? When was the last time someone had noticed she was hurt and actually cared? She couldn't remember. Slowly, reluctantly, she held out her hand. Victor took it carefully, his fingers warm against her cold skin. He unwrapped the dirty bandage with practiced efficiency, examined the cut with a clinical eye, then reached for the antiseptic. "This will sting," he warned. It did. Lena bit her lip, forcing herself not to pull away as he cleaned the wound. His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone who supposedly made people disappear. "You should have gotten stitches," he said, wrapping clean gauze around her palm. "Couldn't afford them." "You won't have to worry about that anymore." Lena wanted to ask what that meant, wanted to demand answers to the 1,000 questions crowding her mind. But she was so tired, and his hands were so warm, and for just a moment she let herself pretend this was normal. That she was normal. That she was being taken care of instead of being claimed as collateral by a different kind of dangerous man. "There." Victor finished taping the gauze and released her hand, but his fingers lingered for a moment too long. "Better." "Thank you," Lena heard herself say. He smiled then, just a slight curve of his mouth, but it transformed his face, made him look younger, more human. "You're welcome." They drove in silence for a while. Lena watched the city pass by outside the window, familiar streets looking strange from inside this expensive car. She'd walked these blocks 1,000 times, but she'd never seen them from this angle. Never moved through the world like this, insulated and protected, invisible, for a different reason. "Why me?" she asked finally. "You said you've been watching me for a long time. Why?" Victor was quiet for so long that Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Then, 3 years ago, you were working at that corner store on 8th Street. The owner's son tried to rob the register. You stepped between him and his father, took a punch meant for someone else. Do you remember?" Lena did remember. The owner, Mr. Kim, had been kind to her when she'd first moved in with her aunt, had let her buy day-old bread for half price, had pretended not to notice when she counted out pennies at the register. His son had been an addict, desperate and dangerous, and when he'd come at his father with rage in his eyes, Lena had moved without thinking. She'd gotten a black eye and a bruised jaw for her trouble. Mr. Kim had cried and tried to pay her, but she'd refused. What was she supposed to take money for? For being decent? For stepping up when someone needed help? I was there that night, Victor continued. I'd been meeting with Mr. Kim about a loan, a real one, legitimate, to help him expand. I watched you put yourself between a violent addict and his victim without hesitation. Watched you refuse payment afterward, like it was nothing. Like you hadn't just risked your life for a man who could barely afford to pay you minimum wage. He glanced at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. You were 15 years old, and you were the bravest person in that store. I was stupid. You were extraordinary. Victor's voice dropped lower, became something almost reverent. I've spent my entire life in a world where everyone has an angle, where kindness is a currency and compassion is a weakness to be exploited. And then I saw you, this girl who had nothing, who was drowning in someone else's debts, who should have been hard and bitter and cruel. And you were none of those things. You were just good. Lena's throat tightened. I'm not good. I'm nobody special. You're wrong. Victor pulled up to a red light and turned to face her fully. You're someone who gives pieces of yourself away to people who don't deserve them. Someone who apologizes for existing, who makes herself small, who accepts abuse as if it's earned. Someone who should have broken 1,000 times, but somehow remains soft in a world that rewards hardness. That's not nobody, Lena. He stopped, jaw tightening. That's someone worth protecting. Worth stalking, you mean? Yes, he said simply, without shame. I won't apologize for that. I won't apologize for making sure you got home safe, for redirecting Chen's men when they started sniffing around, for stepping in when Mrs. Miller tried to use you as collateral. I won't apologize for wanting to keep you from being destroyed by people who see you as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. That's not protection. That's obsession. Victor's smile was dark, dangerous. I never said I was sane. I said I could help you. There's a difference. The light turned green. He drove. Lena sat in silence, processing his words, trying to reconcile the man beside her with the monster she'd been told to fear. He was dangerous. She wasn't naive enough to pretend otherwise. He was a crime lord, a man who controlled illegal operations, who had people disappear when they crossed him. He'd just admitted to stalking her for 3 years, to watching her without her knowledge or consent, to insinuating himself into her life from the shadows. She should be terrified. She was terrified. But beneath the terror was something else, something that felt like being seen for the first time in her life. Not as a burden or a tool or an inconvenience, but as a person worth noticing, worth protecting, worth... We're here, Victor said quietly. Lena looked up. They'd arrived at her aunt's building, the crumbling brick facade looking even more depressing in the morning light. Victor parked the car but made no move to get out. Take whatever you need, he said. Whatever matters to you. But Lena? He caught her gaze, held it. You're not coming back here. Whatever you leave behind forever. Understand? She understood. She understood that this was the moment everything changed. That once she packed her things and got back in this car, she would be stepping into a different life. One she hadn't chosen, one she wasn't prepared for, one that terrified and compelled her in equal measure. How long do I have? She asked. Take as long as you need. I'll wait. Lena nodded and opened the car door, stepping out into the cool morning air. She expected Victor to follow, but he stayed in the car, giving her privacy she hadn't asked for but desperately needed. The building's front door hung crooked on its hinges. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. By the time she reached the 6th floor, her legs were shaking. The apartment door was unlocked. Of course it was. Her aunt never locked it. Inside, nothing had changed. Same stained carpet, same watermarked walls, same smell of vodka and regret. Her aunt was passed out on the couch, empty bottle on the floor beside her, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Lena stood in the doorway, looking at the woman who'd taken her in and resented every moment of it. She should feel something, gratitude, guilt, anger, sadness. But all she felt was hollow. She walked to her room and pulled out the plastic garbage bag she used for laundry. It would have to do for packing. She owned so little that it barely mattered. Clothes, 3 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, 2 sweaters, underwear, socks. All secondhand, all worn thin. The coffee can from under her mattress. $247.63. Her life savings. A photograph of her parents, the edges worn from being held too many times. A book, just one, the only one she'd kept when everything else had been sold, a battered copy of Jane Eyre that her mother had given her. That was it. 18 years of life reduced to a garbage bag that barely weighed 10 pounds. Lena stood in the middle of her closet-sized room one last time, memorizing details she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Then she walked out, closing the door behind her with a soft click that felt like an ending. Her aunt didn't stir. Lena made it halfway to the front door before her aunt's voice stopped her. "Where are you going?" Lena turned. Her aunt was sitting up now, bleary-eyed and hungover, taking in the garbage bag with slow comprehension. "Away," Lena said simply. "Away where?" "Does it matter?" Her aunt's laugh was bitter. "After everything I did for you, this is how you repay me? Running off without a word? You didn't do anything for me." Lena's voice came out steady, calm. "You took me in because the state gave you money for it. You kept me because I could work and pay rent. You used my name to—" She stopped, breathed. "I don't owe you anything." "You ungrateful little— I'm 18 now." Lena cut her off. "You don't get to control me anymore. You don't get to take from me anymore. I'm leaving, and you can't stop me." Her aunt stood, swaying slightly, her face twisted with rage and something that might have been fear. "You think you're better than me? You think you're going to just walk out of here and have some perfect life? You're nothing, Lena. You've always been nothing. No money, no family, no future. Whatever you think is waiting for you out there, it's not. You'll come crawling back within a week, and I won't take you in again. You hear me? I won't." Lena turned and walked out. She didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't give her aunt the satisfaction of a reaction. She just left, the way she should have done years ago, and didn't look back. Victor was still waiting in the car. When he saw her coming, he got out and took the garbage bag from her hands without comment, placing it carefully in the trunk as if it was luggage instead of trash. "Everything okay?" he asked. "No." Lena's voice shook. "But it's done." Victor studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. He opened the passenger door for her, and Lena slid inside, letting the expensive leather and climate-controlled air wrap around her like a cocoon. They drove away from the building, away from her aunt, away from the bakery, away from the life that had been slowly suffocating her, and Lena watched it all disappear in the side mirror until there was nothing left but city blocks she didn't recognize. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. "Home," Victor said. "That's not my home." "It will be," he repeated, and this time Lena didn't argue. She was too tired to argue, too worn down and hollowed out and desperate for something, anything that didn't feel like drowning. So she leaned her head against the window and closed her eyes and let Victor Romano drive her toward a future she couldn't imagine, away from a past she couldn't bear to remember. And somewhere between the city and wherever they were going, Lena Park stopped being invisible. For better or worse, someone had finally seen her. Now she just had to survive being seen. The estate appeared through the trees like something from a different world. Lena had expected something cold, concrete walls, security gates, the kind of fortress that screamed money and danger. Instead, Victor's home sat on sprawling grounds north of the city, a modern structure of glass and stone that seemed to grow from the landscape rather than dominate it. Trees lined the long driveway, their branches forming a canopy overhead. Gardens stretched in every direction, not the manicured kind that looked like they'd been sculpted for show, but wild and green and alive. It was beautiful. That was the part that made her chest tighten with something like panic. She'd expected a prison. This looked like paradise, which somehow made it worse. Victor pulled up to the main entrance and cut the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Lena stared at the house, mansion, really, though it didn't feel ostentatious, and tried to process what was happening. 24 hours ago, she'd been mopping floors and counting pennies. Now she was sitting in front of a home that probably cost more than she'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Second thoughts? Victor's voice was quiet, careful. Lena almost laughed. "I've had nothing but second thoughts since you called. You can still leave. I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Give you money to start over. You don't have to stay if you don't want to." She turned to look at him, searching his face for the lie. But his expression was serious, open. He meant it. "And Chen's men? I'll handle them. It'll be messier without you here, harder to negotiate, more likely to escalate into something violent. But I'll handle it. People will get hurt. People always get hurt in my world. That's not your responsibility. But it would be my fault. Victor's jaw tightened. No. It would be Chen's fault for being a greedy bastard, and Mrs. Miller's fault for forging your signature, and your aunt's fault for drowning you in debts you didn't create. The only person in this situation who isn't at fault is you, Lena, so don't take that on. Don't make yourself responsible for everyone else's choices. He was right. Logically, intellectually, she knew he was right. But guilt didn't work on logic. Guilt was the voice in her head that said if she'd just been smarter, more careful, less trusting, maybe none of this would have happened. If she'd read those papers before signing, if she'd stood up to Mrs. Miller, if she'd been less desperate to survive... Stop, Victor said softly. I can see you spiraling. Whatever you're telling yourself right now, it's wrong. You don't know what I'm thinking. You're thinking this is somehow your fault, that you deserve this, that if you'd just done something differently, you wouldn't be here. He reached over and took her hand, the injured one, his thumb brushing carefully over the gauze. You're wrong. You did nothing wrong. You survived the best way you knew how. That's all anyone can do. Lena wanted to pull her hand away, wanted to tell him to stop touching her, stop looking at her like she was something precious instead of broken. But she didn't. She just sat there, letting him hold her hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. I don't understand you, she whispered. I don't understand why you care. I know. Victor's smile was sad, almost apologetic. I'm not sure I understand it myself, but I do care, Lena. More than is probably healthy. So, are you staying? She thought about the alternative. Thought about Victor dropping her off somewhere with a stack of cash and a promise to handle Chen. Thought about starting over in a new city, new name, new life. Always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for the past to catch up. Thought about being alone again, invisible again, one mistake away from drowning again. At least here, someone saw her. At least here, she wasn't alone. I'm staying, she said, and tried not to think about whether it was a choice or just the least terrible option available. Victor's relief was visible, a slight relaxation of his shoulders, a softening around his eyes. He squeezed her hand once, gently, then released it and got out of the car. Lena followed, her legs shaky as she stepped onto the smooth stone driveway. The air smelled different here, cleaner, with hints of pine and something floral she couldn't name. No exhaust fumes, no rotting garbage, no smell of rain-soaked concrete. Even the silence was different, broken only by birdsong and wind through the trees. Victor retrieved her garbage bag from the trunk, and Lena felt a flush of shame at the contrast, this beautiful home and her entire life reduced to trash. If Victor noticed, he didn't comment. He just walked to the front door, which opened before he could reach for it. A woman stood in the doorway, older, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and sharp eyes that took Lena's measure in a single glance. She wore practical clothes, dark slacks and a simple blouse, and carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that suggested she ran this place. Maria, Victor said, and there was warmth in his voice. This is Lena Park. She'll be staying with us. Maria's expression didn't change, but something in her gaze softened. Miss Park, welcome. She stepped aside, gesturing them in. I've prepared the East Guest Suite as you requested, Mr. Romano. Thank you. Victor turned to Lena. Maria manages the house. Anything you need, ask her. She'll either get it or tell you why you don't actually need it. I rarely have to do the latter, Maria said dryly. Mr. Romano doesn't usually bring home strays who ask for unreasonable things. I'm not, Lena started, then stopped. Stray. That's exactly what she was. A stray Victor had picked up off the street. Maria must have seen something in her face because her expression gentled. I meant no offense, dear. Just stating facts. Come. I'll show you to your room. You look like you could use a hot shower and a proper meal. Lena followed her inside, trying not to gawk at the interior. The entryway opened into a vast space with high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out onto the gardens. Everything was clean lines and natural materials, wood and stone and glass, warm without being cluttered. Art hung on the walls, but it wasn't the stuffy kind you saw in museums. These pieces felt alive, chosen for meaning rather than status. It was a home. That's what threw her. Not a showpiece, not a fortress. A home. The East Wing is quieter, Maria said as they climbed a wide staircase. Mr. Romano's quarters are in the West Wing. You'll have privacy. Privacy. As if that was the main concern. As if Lena should be worried about Victor sneaking into her room at night, instead of worrying about what the hell she was doing in this house at all. The guest suite was bigger than her aunt's entire apartment. Bedroom with a king-sized bed, sitting area with a couch and chairs, bathroom with a tub that looked like it could fit 3 people. Windows overlooked the gardens, letting in soft morning light. Maria set Lena's garbage bag on the bed, the only jarring note in the otherwise perfect room, and turned to face her. I imagine you have questions. Too many to know where to start. Start with the practical ones. Those are easier to answer. Maria moved to the closet and opened it, revealing shelves and hangers. You'll need clothes. I can have someone bring a selection this afternoon, or we can arrange a shopping trip if you prefer to choose yourself. I can't afford... Mr. Romano will cover it. I don't want his money. You're his guest. Accepting basic necessities isn't the same as accepting charity. Maria's tone was firm, but not unkind. You need clothes that fit properly and weren't bought at a thrift store 5 years ago. That's not negotiable. How you acquire them is up to you. Lena wanted to argue, but she was too tired. And Maria was right. She couldn't live in 3 pairs of worn jeans and 5 threadbare shirts. Shopping trip, she said finally. I'd rather pick them myself. Good. We'll arrange it for tomorrow. Maria moved to the bathroom, turning on the light. Fresh towels in the cabinet, toiletries in the drawer. If you need something specific that's not here, make a list. She paused at the door. Lunch is at 1. I'll send someone to fetch you. In the meantime, shower, rest. You look exhausted. Maria? Lena's voice came out smaller than she intended. Why is he doing this? Victor, why does he care? Maria was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. That's not a practical question, and it's not my place to answer it. You'll have to ask him yourself. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Lena stood alone in the beautiful room, surrounded by luxury she'd never dreamed of, and felt more lost than she had in her aunt's cramped apartment. At least there, she'd known her place. She'd understood the rules. Here, she didn't know anything. She walked to the window and looked out at the gardens, at the trees swaying in the breeze, at the world Victor had built for himself. A world he was inviting her into for reasons she couldn't fathom. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, different from before. Lena stared at it, fear creeping up her spine. Then she answered. Lena Park. The voice was cold, precise. Not Victor. This is Chen. Her hand tightened on the phone. How did you get this number? I get every number I need. You disappeared this morning. Mrs. Miller says she doesn't know where you went. That's unfortunate. I'm done with the bakery. Whatever debt you think I owe, the debt is real, legal, documented. You signed as guarantor. That makes you liable. A pause. But I'm willing to negotiate. Come back. We can discuss terms. I'm not coming back. Then I'll come to you. Where are you, Lena? She hung up. Her hand shook as she blocked the number, then stared at the phone like it might bite her. Chen had found her number within hours. How long before he found her location? How long before... A knock at the door made her jump. It's me. Victor's voice muffled through the wood. Can I come in? Lena unlocked the door. Victor stood in the hallway, concern written across his face. Chen called, she said without preamble. Victor's expression darkened. What did he say? He wants me to come back. Said he'd negotiate terms. He's lying. Chen doesn't negotiate. He's trying to lure you out. He has my number. How did he... He probably got it from Mrs. Miller. Or your aunt. Doesn't matter. Victor stepped into the room, and Lena noticed he was carrying something, a small box. I should have thought of this earlier. Here. He handed her the box. Inside was a new phone, sleek and expensive. Your old phone is compromised, he said. Use this one. I'm the only person who has the number. Keep your old phone turned off unless you need to check messages. Lena took the new phone, feeling the weight of it in her hand. You really thought of everything. I've been planning this for a long time. He didn't sound apologetic about it. Longer than I probably should admit. Why? The question burst out before she could stop it. Maria said to ask you, so I'm asking, why me? You could have anyone. Why obsess over some broke girl working at a bakery? Victor was quiet, and for a moment Lena thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved to the window, looking out at the gardens with his hands in his pockets. I told you about seeing you at Kim's store, he said finally. What I didn't tell you is what happened after. I left that night planning to forget about you. You were 15. I was 24. It was inappropriate to even think about you, let alone... He stopped, jaw tight. But I couldn't forget. I kept seeing you in my head. This girl who had nothing, who'd been dealt the worst hand possible, who still chose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. It haunted me. So you stalked me? Yes. He turned to face her, and there was something raw in his expression. I started checking on you, just to make sure you were okay. That's what I told myself. Just making sure you were safe. But it became more than that. I learned your routines, your habits, watched you grow from 15 to 16 to 17, watched you get smaller and smaller, like the world was crushing you, and I wanted... He stopped, breathed. I wanted to do something about it, but I couldn't. Not without exposing you to my world, which would have been worse than leaving you alone. Until now. Until Chen forced my hand. Once he targeted you, I couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. I had to choose. Let him take you or bring you here. His eyes met hers. I chose you. I'll always choose you. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. That's not... Victor, that's not normal. That's not healthy. I know. He smiled, but it was bitter. I told you I wasn't sane. I'm not claiming to be a good man, Lena. I'm a criminal. I hurt people. I do terrible things for power and money and control. But with you... He moved closer, and she should have stepped back, but couldn't make herself move. With you, I want to be better. Want to be the kind of man who deserves you. You don't deserve me. You don't own me. I don't want to own you. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I want you to choose me. Eventually. When you're ready. When you understand what I'm offering. Which is what? Marriage? You said that on the phone, that you wanted to marry me. Yes. We just met. I've known you for 3 years. You've watched me for 3 years. That's not the same thing. Lena's voice shook with frustration, fear, something else she couldn't name. You don't know me, Victor. You know my routines, you know my habits, but you don't know what I think, what I want, what I dream about when I can't sleep. You don't know me. Then let me learn. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Stay here. Let me prove I'm not what you think. Let me show you what life could be like without constantly looking over your shoulder, without counting pennies, without being invisible. His fingers were warm against her skin. Lena's breath caught. And if I say no, then I'll respect that. But I'm asking you to give me a chance. Give us a chance. His thumb brushed her cheek, so gentle it made her chest ache. I know I'm asking too much. I know I have no right. But I'm asking anyway. Lena should have pushed him away. Should have told him this was insane, that she needed time, space, normalcy. But she'd given up normalcy the moment she got in his car. And time and space wouldn't change the fundamental truth of her situation. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to turn to, nothing but the choice between Victor's obsession and Chen's cruelty. I'm not promising anything, she said finally. I'm not agreeing to marry you. I'm staying, for now, because I don't have other options. That's enough. Victor's smile was genuine this time, warm and relieved. That's more than enough. He dropped his hand and stepped back, putting distance between them. Lena felt the loss of his warmth like a physical thing. Maria said lunch is at 1, he said, his voice back to normal, calm, controlled. I'll let you settle in. If you need anything, use the house phone. Maria's extension is 1, mine is 2. What if I need you? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Victor froze halfway to the door. Then you call, he said without turning around. Day or night, you call, and I come. That's how this works. He left before she could respond. Lena stood in the middle of the beautiful room, surrounded by silence and luxury and confusion, and tried to figure out what she'd just agreed to. Tried to figure out if she was safe here or in more danger than ever. Tried to figure out why part of her wanted Victor to come back. The shower was everything Lena needed and nothing she deserved. Hot water, endless and perfect, beating against muscles that had been tense for so long she'd forgotten what relaxation felt like. The bathroom was stocked with expensive soaps and shampoos that smelled like lavender and vanilla, nothing like the cheap bar soap she'd used at her aunt's apartment. She stood under the spray until her skin turned pink, until her fingers pruned, until the tension started to leach from her shoulders. When she finally stepped out, the mirror was fogged. She wiped it clear and stared at her reflection. Wet hair plastered to her head, bruises she'd stopped noticing days ago now visible in the bright light, cheekbones too sharp from skipping too many meals. She looked exactly like what she was, a girl who'd been surviving instead of living for so long that the difference had stopped mattering. Victor had seen this girl and decided she was worth obsessing over. The thought would have been funny if it wasn't so disturbing. Lena dried off and realized she had nothing to wear except the clothes she'd arrived in, still damp from the rain, smelling like the bakery in defeat. She wrapped herself in the plush bathrobe hanging on the door and ventured out into the bedroom. A bag sat on the bed that hadn't been there before. She opened it cautiously, half expecting something ridiculous, lingerie or evening gowns or whatever wealthy men thought young women wanted. Instead, she found practical clothes in her size. Jeans, soft sweaters, underwear still in packages, socks, a pair of sneakers, a note in precise handwriting, something to wear until we can get you a proper wardrobe. M. Maria, not Victor. Somehow that made it easier to accept. Lena dressed quickly, trying not to think about how the clothes fit perfectly, how someone had known her size without asking. The jeans were the right length, the sweater soft against her skin. Even the shoes fit. She was still standing in front of the mirror, trying to recognize herself in these new clothes, when another knock sounded at the door. "Miss Park, it's Maria. May I come in?" Lena opened the door. Maria stood in the hallway carrying a tray, tea and sandwiches, the kind made with actual ingredients instead of whatever expired cold cuts were on sale. "I thought you might be hungry," Maria said, moving past Lena to set the tray on the sitting area table. "Lunch isn't for another hour, but you look like you haven't eaten properly in days." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're half-starved and running on adrenaline. Sit. Eat." Lena sat. Maria poured tea and pushed a plate toward her, and Lena found herself obeying, taking a sandwich and biting into it before she could second-guess the wisdom of accepting food from strangers. The sandwich was good, turkey and avocado and something tangy she couldn't identify. She finished it in 4 bites. "Better?" Maria asked. "Yes, thank you. The clothes fit well. I have an eye for these things." Maria sipped her own tea, studying Lena over the rim. "You're probably wondering about me, about what I do here. Victor said you manage the house." "I manage many things. The house, the staff, Mr. Romano's schedule when he lets me. And occasionally, I manage Mr. Romano himself when he's being unreasonable." Despite everything, Lena almost smiled. "Does that happen often?" "More often than he'd admit, less often than it used to." Maria set down her cup. "I've worked for the Romano family for 30 years. I watched Victor grow up. Watched him take over his father's business at 22 when most boys that age are still figuring out how to do their own laundry. He's made mistakes, plenty of them, but he's not a bad man. He's a crime lord. He's a businessman who operates in gray areas. There's a difference." Maria's voice was firm. "I won't lie to you about what he does, Miss Park. He runs operations that exist outside the law. He makes decisions that result in people getting hurt. But he also keeps this city from tearing itself apart. He maintains order when the authorities can't or won't. He protects people who have nowhere else to turn. Like me. Like you. Among others." Maria leaned forward slightly. "I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is all too convenient, too perfect. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for him to show his true colors and reveal himself as another man who wants to use you." Lena didn't deny it. "I can't tell you that won't happen," Maria continued. "I can't promise you Victor's feelings are pure or his intentions honorable. But I can tell you this, I've never seen him like this before. I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you. And that terrifies him more than any business deal gone wrong or rival trying to take his territory. Because for the first time in his life, he's vulnerable. He's given you power over him whether you want it or not. I don't want power over anyone. I just want... Lena stopped, not sure how to finish. What did she want? Safety? Freedom? A life that wasn't defined by debt and survival? You want to not be afraid anymore, Maria said softly. You want to stop looking over your shoulder. You want to be seen without being exploited. I understand that. And I think, given time, you'll find what you need here. But it won't be easy. Victor's world is complicated, dangerous. Being with him means accepting that danger. I'm not with him. Not yet. But you will be. I can see it in how you look at him, like you're afraid of him and drawn to him in equal measure. Like you want to run and stay at the same time. Maria stood, smoothing her slacks. That's not weakness, Miss Park. That's wisdom. Victor Romano is both threat and sanctuary. The question is which one weighs heavier. She left with the tea tray, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts and the remains of lunch. The question is which one weighs heavier. Lena looked around the beautiful room, thought about the new phone in her pocket, and the clothes on her back and the sandwich that had filled her empty stomach. Thought about Victor's hands bandaging her cut, his voice saying, "You call, and I come." Thought about Chen's cold threat and her aunt's bitter words and Mrs. Miller's betrayal. Thought about being invisible for so long, and now being seen so intensely it felt like burning. She didn't have an answer to Maria's question. She wasn't sure she ever would. But she knew one thing. She wasn't leaving. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Lunch was awkward in ways Lena hadn't anticipated. The dining room was smaller than she'd expected. Just a table for 8, windows overlooking a courtyard with a fountain. Victor sat at one end, Lena at the other, with enough space between them that conversation felt like shouting across a canyon. Maria served the meal herself, salad, pasta, fresh bread, and Lena tried not to think about how much this food probably cost compared to the near-expired groceries she'd been living on. Tried not to feel guilty for enjoying it. "You don't have to sit so far away," Victor said after several minutes of silence. "You put me here." "Maria put you there. I would have sat you next to me, but she insisted on propriety." He smiled slightly. "She thinks I'll scare you off if I come on too strong." "Will you?" "Probably. I'm not good at subtlety." Lena picked at her pasta. "Why didn't you join me for breakfast? Why send Maria?" "Because I thought you needed space." "Time to adjust without me hovering." He paused. "Was I wrong?" She didn't know how to answer that. Part of her had been relieved when Maria knocked instead of Victor, but another part, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, had been disappointed. "I spoke to Chen's people," Victor said, changing the subject. "Made it clear you're under my protection. That should buy us time." "How much time?" "Enough. Chen won't move against me openly, not without considering the consequences." "And what are the consequences?" Victor's expression hardened. "War. The kind that ends with bodies in the river and businesses burned to the ground. Chen knows that. He'll posture and threaten, but he won't escalate. Not unless he has no other choice." Lena's appetite vanished. "People could die. Because of me. People could die because of Chen's greed and stupidity. Don't take that on, Lena. This isn't your fault." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it's true." Victor set down his fork, his gaze intense. "You were born into a situation you didn't create. Dealt a hand you didn't ask for. You survived the only way you could. None of that is a moral failing. None of that makes you responsible for what happens next." "Then who is responsible?" "Me. This is my world, my rules, my fight." He leaned back in his chair. "You're just the person I'm choosing to protect. That's all you need to be." But Lena didn't want to be just someone he protected. Didn't want to be a damsel, a charity case, a project. She'd spent her whole life being something for other people. A burden for her aunt, cheap labor for Mrs. Miller, collateral for Chen. She didn't want to be Victor's obsession too, no matter how gentle he was about it. "I want to help," she said suddenly, "with whatever needs to be done. I don't want to just sit here being protected." Victor looked surprised. "Lena, you don't have to, I know I don't have to, but I want to. If I'm going to be here, if I'm going to accept your protection, then I need to do something. I need to be useful. You don't need to earn your place here. Maybe not, but I need to feel like I'm earning it. She met his gaze steadily. Please, give me something to do. Anything. Victor studied her for a long moment, something unreadable crossing his face. Then he nodded slowly. All right, if you're sure. I'm sure. Then we start tomorrow. I'll show you what I do, how I operate, and you can decide where you fit in this world. He stood, moving around the table to stand beside her. But Lena, once you step into my world, there's no going back. You'll see things, learn things, become part of something that most people spend their lives avoiding. Are you ready for that? No, she wasn't ready. She'd never be ready, but she nodded anyway. Good, Victor said softly. And then before she could react, he leaned down and pressed a kiss to the top of her head, quick, gentle, gone, before she could process it. Finish your lunch. Maria will have my head if you don't eat. He left, and Lena sat alone in the dining room, her heart racing, her scalp still tingling from where his lips had touched. This was insane. All of it. And yet she couldn't make herself regret saying yes, couldn't make herself want to leave. The afternoon passed in a strange haze. Maria gave her a tour of the estate, showed her the library, the gym, the pool house, the gardens. Every room was beautiful in that understated way wealthy people achieved without trying. Every space felt lived in, chosen, loved. Mr. Romano designed most of this himself, Maria said as they walked through the library. He has particular tastes, likes things simple but quality, nothing flashy. It's beautiful, Lena admitted. It's home. Maria pulled a book from the shelf, a worn copy of something Lena didn't recognize. He wants you to feel at home here too. That's why he's giving you space, why he's being patient. He knows this is overwhelming. Is he always this patient? Maria laughed. With everyone else? No, he's demanding, exacting, ruthless when necessary. But with you, she slid the book back into place. With you, he's different, softer. It would be endearing if it wasn't so concerning. Concerning how? Because soft men make mistakes. They get distracted. They take risks they shouldn't. Maria fixed Lena with a penetrating look. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it so you understand the stakes. Victor isn't just protecting you. He's put a target on both of you by making his interests known. People will see you as a weakness, a pressure point, and they'll try to exploit that. Lena's stomach clenched. Maybe I should leave then. If I'm putting him in danger, you're not listening. He chose this. He knew the risks and decided you were worth it. The question isn't whether you should leave to protect him. The question is whether you're willing to stay and face what comes next. Before Lena could respond, her new phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Need to handle something. Won't be back until late. Lock your door. What does that mean? Lena asked, showing Maria the message. Maria's expression tightened. It means something happened. Something that requires his attention. Is he in danger? He's always in danger. That's the life he chose. Maria started walking back toward the main house. Come. I'll show you how the security system works. Just in case. Just in case. Those two words hung in the air like a threat. Maria spent the next hour teaching Lena how to arm the system, which doors and windows were wired, where the panic buttons were located. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made everything feel more real. The danger Victor lived in, the world Lena had stepped into, the fact that beautiful houses with gardens and libraries could still become prisons if the wrong people came knocking. By the time Maria left her alone again, night had fallen. Lena stood in her room, looking out at the dark gardens, and tried not to think about where Victor was, what he was doing, whether he was safe. She barely knew him, shouldn't care this much, but she did. Her old phone sat on the nightstand, still turned off. Against her better judgment, Lena turned it on. 17 missed calls, 10 voicemails, dozens of texts. Most were from her aunt, angry, desperate, pleading. A few were from numbers she didn't recognize, and one, time-stamped an hour ago, was from Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. They made me. Lena stared at the message, her chest tight. Made her what? Give them Lena's information? Something worse? She should call, find out. But what good would it do? Mrs. Miller had made her choices. Lena had made hers. She turned the phone off again and climbed into bed, still wearing her clothes, and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Waited for Victor to come home safe. Waited for the other shoe to drop. Sometime after midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway, heard a door open and close, heard the house settle into silence again. Victor was home. Lena closed her eyes and finally let herself sleep. Morning came with a knock Lena didn't want to answer. She'd slept badly, waking every hour to check her phone, listening for sounds in the hallway that never came. Now sunlight streamed through the windows, too bright and cheerful for how exhausted she felt. "Miss Park," Maria's voice, accompanied by another knock. "Mr. Romano is waiting for you downstairs. Breakfast in 20 minutes. Lena dragged herself out of bed, splashed cold water on her face, and pulled on the same clothes from yesterday. She needed that shopping trip Maria had mentioned, needed more than one outfit if she was going to stay here, pretend this was normal, convince herself she hadn't just traded one cage for another. Victor was in the kitchen when she came down. Not the formal dining room, but an actual kitchen with marble counters and professional appliances and the smell of fresh coffee. He stood at the stove wearing dark jeans and a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, cooking eggs like he did this every morning. "You cook?" The words slipped out before Lena could stop them. Victor glanced over his shoulder and she saw the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw that hadn't been there yesterday. Whatever he'd handled last night had left marks. "Sometimes, when I want to think." He plated the eggs and turned to face her fully. "Coffee? Please." He poured her a cup, added cream without asking how she took it, because of course he knew. He'd probably watched her order coffee at that corner store, memorized exactly how she liked it. The thought should have creeped her out. Instead, it just made her tired. "Rough night?" she asked, accepting the mug. "You could say that." Victor set his own coffee down and leaned against the counter, studying her. "You didn't sleep well either." "How do you—" She stopped. "Right. You know everything. I heard you moving around. Your room is above mine." He said it casually, like he hadn't just admitted to tracking her footsteps in the dark. "Want to talk about it?" "Not particularly." "Fair enough." He pushed the plate of eggs toward her. "Eat, then we'll go." "Go where?" "I told you I'd show you what I do, how I operate." Victor's expression was serious. "You said you wanted to be useful. Time to see if you meant it." Lena ate mechanically, not tasting the food. Her stomach was too twisted with nerves, anticipation, something else she couldn't name. She'd asked for this, demanded it, even. Now she had to follow through. They left 20 minutes later in a different car, something lower profile than yesterday's sleek vehicle, a dark sedan that wouldn't attract attention. Victor drove in silence, navigating streets that grew progressively rougher, buildings more run down. They were heading back toward the city, toward the neighborhoods Lena knew. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "To meet someone. A business associate." Victor's hands were relaxed on the wheel, but his eyes never stopped moving, checking mirrors, scanning intersections. "His name is Marcus. He runs operations in the South District. Good man, mostly. Keeps his word, doesn't cause unnecessary trouble." "Why are we meeting him?" "Because he has information about Chen, about what happened to the bakery." Victor glanced at her. "You don't have to come inside. You can wait in the car if you prefer." "I'm coming." "I thought you'd say that." He almost smiled. "Just stay close to me. Don't speak unless spoken to. And if something feels wrong, if I tell you to leave, you leave immediately. No questions, no hesitation. Understood?" Lena nodded, her mouth dry. They pulled up to a warehouse in a part of the city Lena had always avoided, the kind of place where people minded their own business, because curiosity got you hurt. Victor parked in an alley, killed the engine, then turned to face her fully. "Last chance to change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind." "Good." He reached under his seat and pulled out something that made Lena's breath catch. A gun, matte black and compact. He checked it with practiced efficiency, then tucked it into a holster at his back. "Don't look at me like that. You're bringing a gun. I always carry. I just usually don't let you see it." He opened his door. "Come on." The warehouse smelled like motor oil and rust. Lena followed Victor through a side entrance, down a narrow hallway lit by flickering fluorescents. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the building, men talking, laughing, the metallic clang of tools against metal. Victor led her to a door at the end of the hall and knocked twice, some kind of signal. The door opened immediately. The man on the other side was massive, 6'5" at least, broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that suggested he'd done serious time in a serious gym. But his face was open, almost friendly, when he saw Victor. "Romano, right on time." "Marcus." Victor shook his hand, then gestured to Lena. "This is Lena Park. She's with me." Marcus's eyebrows rose, but he didn't comment, just stepped aside to let them in. The room beyond was an office of sorts, desk covered in papers, filing cabinets against one wall, a couch that had seen better days. Two other men stood near the desk, both watching Victor with the kind of wary respect you gave to dangerous animals. "So," Marcus said, closing the door behind them, "Chen's making moves. Tell me something I don't know." "He hit 3 more properties last night. Johnson's pawn shop, the restaurant on 5th, and—" Marcus paused, glancing at Lena. "Your girl's aunt's place." Lena's heart stopped. "What?" Marcus looked uncomfortable. "Sorry, thought you knew. Chen's men tore through her apartment around midnight, trashed everything, looking for you, probably." "Was she there?" Lena's voice came out strangled. "My aunt. Was she hurt?" "Roughed up a bit. Nothing serious, but she's scared. Told them she didn't know where you were." Victor's hand found Lena's elbow, steadying. Chen's sending a message. Escalating. More than that, he's putting out feelers, asking questions about you, about who you're protecting and why. Word's getting around that you pulled some girl out of a bakery and brought her home. People are curious, and when people get curious in our business, they get stupid. Victor's jaw tightened. "What's Chen's endgame?" "He wants a meeting, says he's willing to negotiate terms for the debt if you'll come to the table." "It's a trap." "Obviously, but refusing makes you look weak, like you're scared of him." "I don't care how I look." "Maybe you should." Marcus leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Chen's been moving against your territory for months. Small stuff, testing boundaries. But this bakery thing, he's using it as leverage. If you don't respond, others will think you're soft. That protecting some random girl matters more than maintaining your position." "She's not random. I know that. You know that. But everyone else?" Marcus shrugged. "They're wondering what makes her special, wondering if you're losing your edge." Victor was silent, and Lena could feel the tension radiating off him in waves. This was the cost Maria had warned her about, the vulnerability that came from caring, the target that painted itself on both their backs. "I'll handle Chen," Victor said finally. "Set up the meeting. Public place, neutral territory. I'll bring her." Lena's head snapped toward him. "What?" "You wanted to be involved. This is involvement." Victor's expression was grim. "Chen wants to see what he's dealing with, wants to understand why I'm protecting you. Better to show him on my terms than let him keep digging." "That's insane. You just said it's a trap." "It is. But it's a trap I can control." He turned to Marcus. "Tomorrow night, the restaurant on Vine Street, the one Chen doesn't own. Tell him I'll be there at 8. Just me and Lena. He can bring 2 people. No more. No weapons. Pure negotiation." Marcus looked skeptical. "You trust him to play fair?" "I trust him to be smart. If he kills me in a public restaurant, he'll have every crew in the city coming for his head. He knows that." Victor's smile was cold. "But I'll have backup nearby, just in case smart isn't enough." They talked for another 20 minutes. Logistics, contingencies, backup plans. Lena stopped following the conversation, her mind stuck on the fact that she was going to sit across from Chen tomorrow night. The man who wanted to collect her like a debt. The man who'd ordered her aunt's apartment destroyed. The man who could still destroy everything. When they finally left the warehouse, Lena's legs felt unsteady. Victor guided her back to the car with a hand at the small of her back, protective and possessive at once. "You're angry," he said once they were inside. "You're damn right I'm angry. You just volunteered me for a meeting with a man who wants to hurt me without asking if I was okay with it. Would you have said no?" Lena opened her mouth, then closed it. Because he was right. She wouldn't have said no. She'd asked to be involved, to be useful. This was what useful looked like. "I hate that you're right," she muttered. Victor's laugh was unexpected, genuine and warm. Get used to it. I'm right about most things. And humble too. Humility is overrated. He started the engine. But for what it's worth, I won't let Chen hurt you. That's a promise. You can't promise that. You don't control what he does. No, but I control what happens to him if he tries. Victor's voice dropped into something darker. Chen knows the rules. He touches you. He's a dead man. Simple as that. That's not reassuring. That's just Lena struggled for words. That's more violence. More people getting hurt because of me. Not because of you. Because of Chen's choices. Victor pulled onto the main road. Stop taking responsibility for other people's actions, Lena. You didn't create this situation. You're just trying to survive it. There's no shame in that. They drove in silence for a while. Lena watched the city pass by, recognizing the route back toward Victor's estate. She should feel relieved, going back to safety, to the beautiful house with its gardens and security system. Instead, she felt trapped, like the walls were closing in. Can we stop somewhere? She asked suddenly. Victor glanced at her. Where? I don't know, anywhere. I need air. I need to not be in a car or a house or a warehouse for a few minutes. He didn't argue, just took the next exit and drove until they reached a park. Nothing fancy, just a patch of green with walking paths and a playground where kids screamed and laughed in the morning sun. Victor parked and they got out. Lena walked to a bench and sat, tilting her face up to the sky, breathing deep. The air smelled like cut grass and car exhaust, nothing like the clean air at the estate. But it was real, normal, the kind of place she used to exist in before everything went sideways. Victor sat beside her, not touching, just present. They watched the kids play for a while, their mothers chatting nearby, their world small and simple and uncomplicated. I had a normal life once, Lena said quietly, before my parents died. We weren't rich, but we were happy. My dad worked construction. My mom was a teacher. We had a little house with a yard. I had a dog named Pepper. She smiled at the memory. Dumbest dog you ever met. Used to chase his own tail until he got dizzy and fell over. My parents would laugh so hard they cried. What happened to him after your parents died? My aunt gave him away, said she couldn't afford to feed him. Lena's throat tightened. I was 14. I begged her to let me keep him. Promised I'd get a job, buy his food myself. But she'd already dropped him at a shelter. I never found out what happened to him after that. Victor was quiet for a moment. Then, what breed? What? What kind of dog was he? Lab mix, black with a white patch on his chest. Lena looked at him confused. Why? Just curious. But there was something in his expression, something calculating that made her suspicious. Don't. Don't what? Whatever you're thinking, don't do it. I don't need you to find my childhood dog or buy me a new one or whatever grand gesture you're planning. I wasn't planning anything. You're a terrible liar. Victor smiled. Fine, I was thinking about it. But if you don't want, I don't. Lena turned to face him fully. I don't need you to fix my past, Victor. I don't need you to make up for every bad thing that happened to me. I just need... She stopped, not sure how to finish. What do you need? I don't know. Space to figure out who I am without constantly surviving. Time to breathe. A chance to... She gestured helplessly. To exist without feeling like I owe someone something. Does that make sense? Yes. Victor's voice was soft. And for what it's worth, you don't owe me anything. You staying at the estate, letting me protect you, that's not a debt. That's a gift. One I don't deserve but am grateful for anyway. Lena wanted to argue, to point out all the ways she was already indebted to him, but the sincerity in his voice stopped her. He actually believed what he was saying. He actually thought she was doing him a favor. You're strange, she said finally. I've been told that before. I mean it. You're this powerful crime lord who terrifies grown men, and you're sitting in a park getting sentimental about dogs. I contain multitudes. Victor stood, offering his hand. Come on, Maria's probably got lunch ready, and if we're late, she'll make us both suffer. Lena took his hand and let him pull her up. His grip was warm, steady. When she didn't immediately pull away, he laced their fingers together and held on as they walked back to the car. It should have felt wrong, Should have felt like too much too soon. But Lena's hand fit in his like they'd done this 1,000 times before, and she couldn't quite make herself let go. They drove back to the estate in comfortable silence, hands still linked over the center console. Lena watched the city give way to trees, felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Whatever happened tomorrow night with Chen, whatever happened in the days and weeks after that, she had this moment, this strange, unexpected peace. It would have to be enough. Maria was indeed waiting when they arrived, and her expression suggested she'd noticed the hand-holding. But she didn't comment, just served lunch and disappeared with a knowing look that made Lena's cheeks burn. "She likes you," Victor said once they were alone. "How can you tell?" "She didn't threaten you. That's how Maria shows affection, by not threatening people." Lena almost laughed. "She's terrifying. She's protective. Of me, of this house, of the people who live in it, including you now." Victor paused. "She lost her daughter years ago. Car accident. Since then, she's taken care of me like I'm hers. I think she's doing the same with you. She told me she watched you grow up. She did more than watch. She raised me after my father got too busy with business and my mother left. Maria taught me how to cook, how to tie a tie, how to treat people with respect even when I wanted to." He stopped. "She's family, more than my actual family ever was." There was pain in his voice, old and buried deep. Lena recognized it because she carried the same kind, the ache of being abandoned by people who were supposed to stay. "Is your mother still alive?" she asked carefully. "As far as I know, she lives in Italy with her new husband. We haven't spoken in 8 years." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She made her choice. I made mine." Victor pushed his plate away, his appetite apparently gone. "Families are complicated. Sometimes the people who love you best aren't the ones you're related to." Lena thought about her aunt, about Mrs. Miller, about all the people who were supposed to care for her and didn't. Thought about Maria bringing her clothes and Victor bandaging her hand and this strange, broken family they were building in the ruins of their real ones. "Yeah," she said quietly, "sometimes they're not." The afternoon passed in a strange haze of normalcy. Victor disappeared into his office for business calls, and Lena found herself in the library, curling up on a window seat with a book she didn't really read. She just held it, stared at the pages, and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. 2 days ago, she'd been nobody. Now she was somebody's somebody, Victor's somebody, and people were getting hurt because of it. Her aunt's apartment trashed, Chen making threats, violence brewing just beneath the surface. This was her life now. This strange balance between luxury and danger, between being protected and being a target. She must have fallen asleep at some point, because when she woke, the sun was lower and Victor was standing in the doorway watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "Sorry," she mumbled, sitting up. "I didn't mean to—" "You needed rest. Don't apologize." He moved into the room, hands in his pockets. "I have to go out tonight. Business meeting. I'll be back late." "Is it dangerous?" "Everything I do is dangerous. But this is routine, standard negotiation with suppliers." He paused. "I wanted to tell you before I left, so you wouldn't worry." "I'm not—" She stopped. "Okay, I'll worry anyway." Victor's smile was soft. "Maria will be here, and there's security on the grounds. You're safe." "I know. It's not me I'm worried about." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, pleasure, something that looked almost like wonder. "I'll be careful," he said quietly. "I promise." He left, and Lena sat alone in the library as darkness fell outside. She should go back to her room, maybe take another shower, try to sleep. But she felt restless, trapped, like the walls were pressing in despite how spacious everything was. She ended up in the kitchen, making tea she didn't want just to have something to do with her hands. Maria found her there 20 minutes later, sitting at the counter staring into her mug. "Can't sleep?" Maria asked. "Can't stop thinking." "About tomorrow?" "About everything." Lena looked up. "Is this what his life is always like? Meetings and threats and having to constantly watch his back?" "Yes, it's exhausting if I'm being honest, but he's good at it, better than his father was." Maria pulled out a chair and sat across from her. "You're worried about him. I barely know him. And yet you're worried." Lena couldn't deny it. "Is that stupid?" "No, it's human." Maria's expression softened. Victor doesn't let people care about him, doesn't let them close enough to worry. The fact that the fact that he's letting you means something. What does it mean? That he trusts you. Despite everything, despite how little time you've spent together, he trusts you not to use his vulnerabilities against him. That's rare and dangerous and important. I don't want his trust. I don't want to be important. Too late. Maria stood, patted Lena's shoulder. You made your choice when you got in his car. Now you have to live with the consequences, just like he does. She left Lena alone with her tea and her thoughts, and the weight of choices she hadn't fully understood when she made them. Victor came home at 2 a.m. Lena knew because she was still awake, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, when she heard his car pull up. Heard the front door open and close. Heard footsteps in the hallway, pause outside her door, then move on. She should stay in bed, should give him privacy, space, whatever professional distance still existed between them. Instead, she got up and padded down the hallway in bare feet and pajamas, following the sound of movement to his room. His door was cracked open, light spilling out into the dark hallway. Lena knocked softly. Come in. She pushed the door open. Victor's room was similar to hers, but larger. King bed, sitting area, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. He stood at the window with his back to her, still dressed in the dark suit he'd left in, his shoulders tight with tension. You're awake, he said without turning. So are you. Couldn't sleep. Me either. Lena stepped further into the room, suddenly unsure why she'd come. Are you okay? Why wouldn't I be? You seem, I don't know, tense. Victor turned to face her, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight he carried that never seemed to lighten. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Chen's not going to make this easy. We don't have to go. We're going. Running would only make things worse. He moved closer, and Lana fought the urge to step back. But I need you to promise me something. What? If things go wrong tomorrow, if Chen tries something, if the situation escalates, I need you to leave. Immediately. No arguing, no hesitation. You leave and you don't look back. I'm not leaving you. Lena, no. You don't get to tell me I'm involved and then demand I abandon you when things get dangerous. I'm staying. Whatever happens, I'm staying. Victor stared at her, something raw and unguarded crossing his face. Then, before she could react, he closed the distance between them and pulled her into his arms. The hug was tight, almost desperate. Lena froze for a second, then slowly wrapped her arms around his waist, feeling the rapid beat of his heart against her cheek. You're going to be the death of me, he murmured into her hair. Probably. His laugh was shaky. Thank you. For what? For staying, for caring, for being reckless and brave, and he pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands framing her face. For being you. Lena's breath caught. He was so close, his eyes dark and intense, his touch gentle, despite the intensity in his expression. She should pull away, should maintain distance, boundaries, some semblance of self-preservation. Instead, she stood on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, tentative, just a press of lips, a moment of connection. But when she pulled back, Victor's eyes were wide, stunned. Was that? He stopped. Did you mean? I don't know what I meant, Lena admitted, her voice shaking. I don't know anything anymore. I needed to do that once, so I'd know. Know what? If this is real. If what I'm feeling is real, or just desperation, or gratitude, or... She couldn't finish. Victor's thumb brushed her cheek, his touch impossibly gentle. And? Is it real? Lena didn't have an answer, so she kissed him again, longer this time, letting herself feel the way he responded. Careful at first, then deeper, his hands sliding into her hair, her body pressed against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lena's head was spinning. I should go, she whispered. Stay. Victor, not for... Just stay. Sleep here. I'll take the couch. He looked almost vulnerable. I just want to know you're close, that you're safe. Lena should say no, should maintain boundaries, protect herself, not blur lines that were already impossibly tangled. But she was tired of being alone, tired of being afraid, tired of pretending she didn't want exactly what he was offering. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll stay. Victor's relief was visible. He gave her the bed, grabbed a pillow and blanket, and settled onto the couch in the sitting area. Lena climbed under the covers, still wearing her pajamas, and watched him get comfortable in the dim light. Victor? Yeah? Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me. I know, but I'm going to anyway. He smiled, and even from across the room she could feel the warmth of it. Get some sleep, Lena. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. She closed her eyes, listening to his breathing, and for the first time since her parents died, Lena Park didn't feel alone. Morning would bring Chen and negotiations and dangers she couldn't predict. But right now, in this moment, she was safe, cared for, seen, and maybe that would be enough to face whatever came next. Lena woke to find Victor already dressed, standing by the window with a coffee cup in hand. Early morning light painted him in shades of gold, but there was nothing soft about his expression. He looked like a man preparing for war. What time is it? Her voice came out rough with sleep. 6:30. You slept through my alarm. He turned, and his expression softened when he saw her. There's coffee in the kitchen. Maria's making breakfast. Lena sat up, suddenly aware she was in his bed, in his room, after kissing him twice last night. The memory made her cheeks burn. About last night, we don't have to talk about it now, not before tonight. Victor set down his cup. But Lena, I'm not sorry it happened, and I hope you're not either. She wasn't. That was the terrifying part. She should regret it, should feel like she'd made another impulsive mistake in a life full of them. Instead, she just felt seen, wanted, like maybe for once she'd done something right. I'm not sorry, she admitted quietly. Victor's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way that transformed his entire face. Good. Now get dressed. We have a long day ahead. The morning passed in careful preparation. Maria brought clothes, a simple black dress that was elegant without being flashy, shoes that were comfortable but looked expensive. Nothing that screamed wealth, but everything that whispered it. Victor wanted Chen to see that Lena was protected, cared for, valuable. Not a debt to be collected, but a person who mattered. You look beautiful, Maria said, adjusting the dress at Lena's shoulders. But more importantly, you look strong. That's what matters tonight. I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let Chen see it. Maria stepped back, examining her work. Mr. Romano will keep you safe, but you need to hold your own too. Don't apologize, don't look down, don't make yourself small. You're not that invisible girl from the bakery anymore. Lena stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Clean clothes, proper nutrition, a few days without constant stress. It had changed her. Or maybe Victor had changed her. Maybe this was who she'd always been underneath the survival, waiting for permission to exist. Victor was waiting downstairs, dressed in a dark suit that probably cost more than Lena had made in a year at the bakery. He looked every inch the dangerous man he was, powerful, controlled, lethal. But when he saw her descending the stairs, something soft crossed his face. You're staring, Lena said, suddenly self-conscious. I'm allowed to stare. You're... He stopped, cleared his throat. You're ready? As I'll ever be. That's not true. Yeah, you could never be ready for this. But you're brave enough to do it anyway. That's what matters. He held out his hand. Stay close to me. Follow my lead. And remember, whatever Chen says, whatever he offers, we don't accept anything tonight. This is reconnaissance, understanding his position. What if he won't negotiate? Then we find another way. Victor's jaw tightened. But one way or another, this ends. You're not living under Chen's threat. I won't allow it. They drove to the restaurant in silence. Victor's hand found hers in the car, holding tight, and Lena drew strength from the contact. She could do this. She'd survived her aunt, Mrs. Miller, years of poverty and abuse. She could survive one dinner with a crime lord. The restaurant on Vine Street was upscale, but not ostentatious. White tablecloths and soft lighting, the kind of place where business deals happened over expensive wine. Victor had chosen well. Public enough that violence would attract attention, private enough that conversations wouldn't be overheard. Chen was already seated when they arrived. He looked different than Lena expected. Younger, maybe 40, with silver threading through his dark hair and expensive glasses that made him look more like a professor than a criminal. But his eyes were cold when they landed on Lena, assessing her like merchandise. "Romano." Chen stood, offering a hand Victor didn't take. "And this must be Miss Park, the girl causing all this trouble." "I'm not causing trouble," Lena said, hating how her voice shook. "You are." Chen's laugh was sharp. "Spirit, I like that. Sit, please." Victor pulled out Lena's chair, positioned so he was between her and Chen's two companions, both younger men with the same cold eyes as their boss. Backup, muscle, whatever you called people whose job was intimidation. "You know why we're here," Victor said, his tone conversational but with steel underneath. "You have a problem with the debt. I have a problem with you using an innocent girl as collateral. Let's solve both." "Innocent?" Chen tasted the word. "Is she, though? She signed the documents. She was 16. The signature is invalid. I have lawyers who'd disagree." "I have lawyers who'd bury yours." Victor leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "But let's skip the legal posturing. You don't want her because of the debt. You want the bakery location. The debt is just leverage." Chen's smile was thin. "You've done your homework." "I always do. So here's my offer. I buy the property from Mrs. Miller. Fair market value plus 20%. You walk away, find another location for your expansion. Everybody wins. Except I've already invested resources in acquiring that property. Time, money, personnel. You expect me to just write that off?" "I expect you to be smart. You're expanding into my territory. That makes this a bigger problem than one bakery. You push this, you're pushing me. And I promise you don't want that fight." The temperature in the room dropped. Chen's companions shifted, hands moving toward jackets. Victor didn't move at all, but Lena felt the change in him, the coiled violence just beneath the surface, ready to strike. "Gentlemen," Chen said mildly, "we're having dinner. Let's be civilized." "Civilized," Victor repeated. "Like trashing an elderly woman's apartment? Like forging documents to trap a teenager? Very civilized, Chen." "Business is rarely pretty. You of all people should know that." Chen's gaze slid to Lena. "Tell me, Miss Park, are you here willingly? Or is Romano holding you as collateral for a different kind of debt?" "I'm here because I choose to be," Lena said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Victor gave me options. You only gave me threats." "Victor." Chen's eyebrows rose. "First names already? How intimate?" "Careful," Victor warned, his voice dropping into something dangerous. "You're already on thin ice. Don't make it worse by being disrespectful." "Or what? You'll start a war over some girl you've known for 3 days?" Chen leaned forward. "That's not good business, Romano. That's weakness. And weakness in our world gets you killed." "Then kill me." Victor's smile was cold. "Go ahead, try. See how that works out for you." The silence stretched, thick with threat. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was spiraling, getting dangerous, exactly what Victor had said wouldn't happen in a public place. But Chen's pride was wounded, his authority challenged, and men like him didn't back down when challenged. "I have another offer," Chen said finally. "The girl comes with me for 3 months, works off the debt in one of my establishments. At the end of 3 months, we're even. The bakery's mine, your girl's free, no more problems." Lena felt sick. "One of your establishments? You mean—" "I mean, whatever generates the most revenue. I'm a businessman, Miss Park. I use assets where they're most valuable." Chen's smile was predatory. "Of course, if you'd prefer, we could arrange something more permanent. Marriage, perhaps. I'm always looking for a wife who understands the business." Victor moved so fast Lena barely saw it. One second he was seated, the next he had Chen by the throat, slamming him back against his chair. Chen's companions jumped up, reaching for weapons, but Victor's free hand was already holding his gun, aimed at the nearest man's chest. "You just made a mistake," Victor said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "A fatal one." "Victor." Lena's voice cut through the tension. "Don't. He just propositioned you, threatened you. I'm well within my rights." "You're about to start a war in a public restaurant and prove him right about being weak." Lena stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "Let him go." Victor's eyes met hers, wild with rage and something else. Fear. Fear for her. Fear of losing her. Fear of what Chen represented. But slowly, his grip loosened. He released Chen and stepped back, gun still trained on the companions. Chen straightened his collar, breathing hard. Your girl has more sense than you do, Romano. My girl just saved your life. Show some gratitude. Victor holstered his weapon, but didn't sit. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from the bakery. You're going to stop threatening Lena. And in exchange, I'll forget you just insulted her in front of me. Consider it a gift. And if I don't accept your gift, then I stop being civilized. I burn every operation you have to the ground. I turn your suppliers against you. I make it so no one in this city will do business with you without looking over their shoulder. And when you have nothing left, when you're broken and desperate and alone, I'll offer you a deal exactly as insulting as the one you just offered her. And you'll take it, because you'll have no other choice. Victor delivered the threat in the same conversational tone he'd used for ordering coffee that morning. Somehow, that made it more terrifying. Chen stared at him for a long moment, calculating. Then he stood, gestured to his men. This isn't over. Yes, Victor said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. Chen left, his companions following. The restaurant's other patrons had carefully avoided looking at the confrontation, but Lena could feel their attention now, the whispered conversation starting as soon as Chen walked out. Victor turned to her, and the rage had drained from his face, replaced by something raw and shaken. Are you all right? Am I all right? You just threatened to destroy a man's entire operation. He threatened you first. He made a disgusting proposition. That's not the same as... Lena stopped, breathed. We should leave. Yeah, we should. Victor threw cash on the table, far more than the bill would have been, and guided her toward the exit with a hand at her back. His other hand stayed near his weapon. They made it to the car without incident. Victor drove 3 blocks before pulling over in an alley, cutting the engine, and gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Victor? I almost killed him. His voice was rough. Right there in that restaurant, I almost put a bullet in his head. But you didn't. Because you stopped me. Not because I didn't want to. Not because it wasn't justified. Because you asked me not to. He turned to face her. Do you understand what that means? You have that much power over me. One word from you, and I'd have started a war. One word, and I'd have walked away. He stopped. That's terrifying. Lena reached over and took his hand, lacing their fingers together. It's not terrifying. It's trust. It's dangerous. Maybe. But it's also what makes you different from him. Chen would have killed me in that restaurant if it served his purposes. You protected me. Even when it would have been easier not to. I'll always protect you, even when it's stupid, even when it costs me. Victor squeezed her hand. That's not going to change, Lena. Whether you stay or go, whether you choose me or walk away, I'll still be watching, still keeping you safe, because I can't not. You understand that? She did. And it should have scared her. This intensity, this obsession, this man who'd rearranged his entire world around her existence. But instead it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Cherished. Take me home, she said quietly. Victor started the engine. The drive back was quiet, both of them processing what had happened. Chen wouldn't let this go. Lena knew that much. Men like him didn't accept humiliation gracefully. There would be retaliation, escalation, violence. Victor had bought them time, but at what cost? Maria was waiting when they arrived, her face tight with concern. I heard, Marcus called. Of course he did. News travels fast. Victor helped Lena out of the car. Chen's going to retaliate, probably tonight. Get everyone on alert. I want perimeter security doubled and... Already done. I'm not stupid, Maria turned to Lena. You all right? I don't know. Ask me tomorrow. Fair enough. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry, though I suspect neither of you has much appetite. She headed inside, leaving them alone in the driveway. Victor looked exhausted, the adrenaline wearing off and leaving only the weight of what he'd done, what he'd almost done. I should make some calls, coordinate with my people. Make sure we're ready if Chen moves tonight. I'll wait up. You don't have to... I'm waiting up. Lena's voice was firm. You don't get to protect me and then push me away when things get difficult. I'm here. I'm staying. Get used to it. Something like relief crossed his face. Stubborn. Pot. Kettle. He almost smiled. Go inside. I'll be up in an hour. Lena went, but not to her room. She found herself in the library again, curled up in the same window seat as before, staring out at the gardens now shrouded in darkness. Somewhere out there, Chen was planning his revenge. Somewhere out there, violence was brewing that would eventually crash against these walls. And she'd chosen this. Chosen to stand beside Victor, chosen to be part of his world, chosen him over every safer option. The realization should have brought regret. Instead, it just brought clarity. She found Victor an hour later, exactly as promised, in his office surrounded by papers and phones and the infrastructure of his empire. He looked up when she entered, surprised. Couldn't sleep? Didn't try. Lena closed the door behind her. I've been thinking. About? About Chen. About what he offered. She moved closer to the desk. About what I'm willing to risk to stay here. Victor stood, coming around the desk to face her. Lena, I'm not finished. You said you'd always protect me, that you'd watch over me whether I stayed or left. But I don't want protection from the shadows, Victor. I don't want to be something you guard from a distance. If I'm going to be here, if I'm going to be part of your life, then I need to be all in. No half measures, no holding back. What are you saying? I'm saying yes, to whatever you asked me that first day in the car, to staying, to being yours, to... She took a breath. To trying, really trying. Not because I have no other options, but because I want to. Victor stared at her like she'd just said something in a language he didn't speak. You don't have to. I'm not asking you to decide anything right now, especially not after tonight. I'm not deciding because of tonight. I'm deciding because of every moment since you picked me up. Every time you gave me space when I needed it, every time you listened instead of commanded, every time you made me feel like I mattered. Lena closed the distance between them. I kissed you last night because I wanted to. I'm telling you this now because I want to. Stop second-guessing what I want, Victor. I'm 18, not a child. I can make my own choices. And you choose this. Choose me. I choose you. He kissed her then, and it wasn't careful or tentative like before. It was desperate, claiming, full of all the fear and relief and longing he'd been holding back. Lena kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands fisting in his shirt, anchoring herself to this moment, this choice, this man who'd seen her when she was invisible. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. His laugh was shaky. I can live with that. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, the world outside temporarily forgotten. But reality couldn't be ignored forever. Victor's phone buzzed, shattering the peace. He checked it, his expression darkening. Chen's moving. Marcus spotted his men heading toward the South District, probably going after my warehouses. What do we do? We? Nothing. I handle it. You stay here where it's safe. Victor. No arguments. Not on this. His voice was gentle but firm. You want to be all in, I respect that. But all in doesn't mean throwing yourself into danger. It means trusting me to handle the things I need to handle. Can you do that? Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist on coming with him, on being part of the solution. But she saw the fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. Saw how much it cost him to leave her behind, knowing she was what Chen really wanted. Be careful, she said finally. Always. He kissed her once more, quick and hard. Lock the doors after I leave. Don't open them for anyone but Maria or me. If something happens, if you don't hear from me by morning, there's a safe in my room. Code is your birthday. Inside there's money, documents, everything you need to disappear. Promise me you'll use it if necessary. Nothing's going to happen. Promise me, Lena. I promise. The words tasted like ash. Victor left, and Lena watched from the window as his car disappeared down the driveway. Maria appeared beside her, silent and solid. He'll be fine, the older woman said. He always is. You sound like you're trying to convince yourself. Maybe I am. Maria's expression was grim. Chen's playing a dangerous game. Attacking Victor's operations directly, that's a declaration of war. And wars in our world don't end pretty. What do? We wait, and we pray he comes home in one piece. They waited in the library, neither speaking much, both jumping at every sound. An hour passed, then two. Lena's phone stayed silent. The house creaked and settled around them, normal sounds that felt ominous in the dark. At midnight, headlights swept across the driveway. Lena ran to the window, Victor's car, but driving too fast, too erratic. It screeched to a stop and Victor got out, and even from a distance, Lena could see the blood on his shirt. She was at the door before Maria could stop her, yanking it open, running toward him. Victor caught her, held her tight, and she felt him shaking. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Not my blood." His voice was hoarse. "Chen's men hit 3 warehouses. We stopped them at the second. There was shooting. People got hurt." "Did you?" "No, I didn't kill anyone, but I wanted to. I almost—" He stopped, his grip on her tightening. "I need you to know something. The man I am in that world, the things I do, the violence I'm capable of, that's real. That's not something I can separate from who I am. If you're choosing me, you're choosing all of it. The danger, the blood, the moral compromises. You need to be sure." Lena pulled back just enough to look at him. His face was pale, eyes haunted, and she saw the cost of his choices written in every line. This was who Victor Romano was. Not a hero, not a villain, just a man trying to survive in a world that didn't allow for simple answers. "I'm sure," she said, "even knowing what I'm capable of, even knowing, especially knowing." She took his face in her hands. "You protected your people tonight. You stopped an attack. You came home when you could have kept fighting. That's not a monster, Victor. That's someone trying to do right in a world where right isn't always clear." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You saw me. That's all you had to do." Maria cleared her throat from the doorway. "As touching as this is, Mr. Romano needs to get cleaned up, and we need to assess the damage. Miss Park, help me with the first aid kit." The next hour passed in a blur of cleaning wounds that weren't his, checking for injuries he insisted he didn't have, and listening to phone calls that painted a picture of chaos barely contained. Chen had lost men in the attack. So had Victor. The war both of them had tried to avoid was now inevitable. "We need to end this," Victor said finally, pacing his office like a caged animal. "Before more people die. Before Chen decides to come after you directly." "How do we end it?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." He stopped pacing, looked at her. "This isn't what I wanted. Any of this. I wanted to give you safety, security, a life where you didn't have to be afraid. Instead, I gave you war. You gave me a choice. That's more than anyone else ever did." Lena stood, cross to him. "We'll figure this out. Together." "Together," Victor repeated like he was testing the word. Then he pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and held on like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. They stood there in his office as dawn broke outside. Two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their lives, holding tight against the storm they couldn't quite escape. Whatever came next, Chen's retaliation, the war brewing in the shadows, the impossible choices they'd have to make, they'd face it together. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The war lasted 3 days before Victor found the leverage he needed. 3 days of Lena barely sleeping, pacing the estate while Victor coordinated defenses and counterattacks from his office. 3 days of watching him come home exhausted, sometimes with bruises, once with a cut above his eye that Maria stitched closed while he pretended it didn't hurt. 3 days of feeling useless while the world burned around them because Chen wanted revenge and Victor refused to give her up. On the 4th morning, Lena woke to find Victor sitting on the edge of her bed, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "It's over," he said quietly. She sat up fast, heart hammering. "What happened? Is Chen—" "Alive, but finished. I found his supplier, the one who moves product through the port, made him a better offer. Without supply, Chen has nothing. His operations are already collapsing." Victor's voice was flat, drained. "He'll be out of the city by tonight, if he's smart. And if he's not, then he'll be dead by morning." He said it without emotion, like he was discussing the weather. Either way, you're safe. The debt's gone. The threat's gone. You're free. Free. The word should have brought relief. Instead, it just made Lena's chest tighten with something complicated and messy. What did it cost you? Does it matter? Yes. Victor looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the exhaustion bone deep in him. The weight of choices made, violence authorized, lines crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Money, territory, 3 men in the hospital, one who might not make it, and whatever was left of my soul that believed I could do this without becoming exactly like my father. Lena reached for his hand. His fingers were cold. You're not like Chen. You're not... I cut off a man's supply to destroy his business. I threatened people. I authorized violence that put someone in critical condition. How is that different? His laugh was bitter. The only difference is I did it for you instead of for greed. But violence is still violence, Lena. Blood is still blood. You protected people, your people, me, everyone Chen would have hurt if you'd let him keep going. That's not the same as what he did. Keep telling yourself that. Maybe one day I'll believe it too. Victor stood, moved to the window. Dawn was breaking outside, painting the gardens in shades of gold and pink. Beautiful and peaceful, nothing like the war that had just ended. I have a meeting this afternoon with Chen, finalizing terms of his departure, making sure he understands what happens if he ever comes back. I want to come. No. Victor, this one's not negotiable. He turned to face her. He's a wounded animal right now, dangerous, unpredictable. I'm not bringing you anywhere near him. He started this because of me. I should be there when it ends. He started this because of his own greed. You were just the excuse. Victor's expression softened slightly. I know you want closure, but closure isn't watching me threaten a man into exile. It's waking up tomorrow and realizing you don't have to be afraid anymore. That's what I'm giving you. Lena wanted to argue, but she saw the determination in his face. He'd made up his mind. And maybe he was right. Maybe she didn't need to see Chen broken to feel free. Maybe freedom was just this, waking up safe, in a house that felt like home, with someone who'd burned the world down to protect her. Okay, she said finally, but you come back. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. You come back. I promise. He crossed to the bed, leaned down and kissed her forehead. Get some rest. When I get back, we need to talk about what comes next. What comes next? Everything. The future. What you want from this, he gestured between them, from us. What kind of life you want to build. But later, after I'm sure Chen's really gone. He left, and Lena sat in bed watching the sunrise, feeling strangely hollowed out. The threat was over. She was safe. So why did she feel like something was ending instead of beginning? Maria found her an hour later, still sitting in bed, staring at nothing. Breakfast is ready, and before you say you're not hungry, I made your favorite. Maria set a tray on the nightstand. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, coffee, exactly how Lena liked it. Eat. You've barely touched food in 3 days. Lena picked at the eggs mechanically. Victor says it's over. It is. Mr. Chen made the smart choice. He's leaving. Did Victor really do all the things he said? Cut off supplies, threaten people, hurt? Yes, he did what needed to be done to protect what's his. That's the world he lives in, Miss Park. The world you've chosen to be part of. Maria sat on the edge of the bed. You're having second thoughts. I don't know what I'm having. I know I chose this, chose him. But knowing and living it are different things. They are. And they'll keep being different. There will be more Chens, more threats, more moments when you'll watch him walk out that door and wonder if he's coming back. That's the cost of loving a man like Victor Romano. I didn't say I loved him. Maria's smile was knowing. You didn't have to. It's written all over your face. Has been since that first night you slept in his room. She stood, smoothed her slacks. The question isn't whether you love him. It's whether you love him enough to accept what that means. The danger, the violence, the moral compromises. Whether you can build a life in the spaces between the chaos. Can you? Build a life in those spaces? I did. 30 years with this family, watching them make impossible choices, cleaning up the aftermath. I stayed because I loved Victor's mother first, then Victor himself when she left. Because someone had to care about that boy. Someone had to make sure he remembered how to be human. That was my space between the chaos, being the person who reminded him there was more to life than business and blood. Maria moved toward the door. You'll find your space too, but only if you decide the love is worth the cost. She left Lena alone with breakfast and thoughts that wouldn't settle. Was it worth it? 3 days of war, people hurt, violence authorized in her name. Was Victor worth that? Was what they had worth the price others paid? Lena didn't have an answer. She just had the memory of Victor's hands bandaging her cut, his voice saying, "You call and I come," his face when she'd said, "I choose you." She had the feeling of being seen for the first time in her life, of mattering to someone who made the world bend to his will. She had love, even if she hadn't named it yet. The morning dragged. Lena tried reading, tried walking the gardens, tried anything to distract herself from watching the clock. Victor had said afternoon. That could mean anything. Could mean he was walking into danger right now while she sat here useless and afraid. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Meeting in an hour. I'll be home by 5. Promise. Lena stared at the message, torn between relief and terror. An hour. 60 minutes for everything to go wrong, for Chen to do something desperate, for Victor to make a choice that cost him everything. She tried to text back to say be careful, or I'm here, or I love you, even though she hadn't said it out loud yet. But her fingers froze over the keyboard. What if those were the last words she sent him? What if she said I love you, and he never came home to hear it in person? Instead, she typed, I'm holding you to that promise. His response came immediately. I keep my promises. All of them. The afternoon stretched endless. Maria tried to distract her with plans for dinner, with talk about expanding the gardens, with anything but the meeting happening downtown. But Lena couldn't focus. She just sat in the library, watching the clock, counting down minutes that felt like hours. 4 o'clock came and went, then 4:30, 4:45. At 4:53, headlights swept across the driveway. Lena ran to the window. Victor's car, driving normal speed, parking like he did every day. He got out alone, whole, not bleeding. Walked to the front door like he hadn't just negotiated with a man who wanted him dead. She met him in the entryway, and he caught her as she crashed into him, holding tight. It's done, he said into her hair. Really done. Chen signed papers agreeing to stay out of the city permanently. In exchange, I let him keep his life and enough money to start over somewhere else. He took the deal. What about the bakery? Bought it from Mrs. Miller this morning, paid off the debt in full, gave her enough extra that she can retire if she wants. The property's mine now. Victor pulled back to look at her. I'm turning it into a community center. Job training, literacy programs, free meals for people who need them. Figured it should help people instead of trap them. Lena's eyes burned. You didn't have to, I wanted to. Wanted to take something Chen tried to use for harm and make it better. Plus, he smiled slightly. I figured you'd like it. Thought maybe you could help run it, if you wanted. Give you something to do besides worry about me. I don't know anything about running a community center. You know about surviving impossible situations, about being invisible and needing someone to see you. That's exactly the perspective those programs need. Victor's expression grew serious. But that's only if you want to, if you want to stay. We need to talk about that, about what comes next. You said that this morning, and I meant it. Come on. He took her hand and led her through the house, out the back door, into the gardens where evening was settling like silk. They walked to a bench under an old oak tree, sat close enough that their shoulders touched. I need you to understand something, Victor said quietly. What happened with Chen? That won't be the last time. There will always be threats, always be people testing boundaries, always be violence at the edges of my world. I can't promise you safety, can't promise you normal. All I can promise is that I'll do everything in my power to keep you from being hurt by it. I know. Do you? Really? Because once you commit to this, to me, to this life, there's no going back. You can't unknow what you know about what I do. Can't unsee what you've seen. It changes you. And I need to know you're willing to accept that change. Lena was quiet for a moment, thinking about the girl she'd been a week ago. Invisible, terrified, drowning in debts she didn't create. Thinking about who she was now, seen, protected, Loved by a man who'd started a war rather than let her be hurt. I'm already changed, she said finally. The moment I got in your car, the moment I chose to stay, I became someone different. Someone who matters to people. Someone who has power even when she feels powerless. Someone who... She took a breath. Someone who loves you, even though it's terrifying and complicated and probably stupid. Victor went very still. Say that again. Which part? The love part. I love you. The words came easier the second time. I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first night when you bandaged my hand. Maybe when you let me sleep in your room. Maybe when you threatened Chen for insulting me. But it happened, and I can't take it back even if I wanted to. Do you want to? No, I want... Lena turned to face him fully. I want to build a life with you. In those spaces between the chaos Maria talked about. I want to run your community center and sleep in your bed and know that when you leave, you're coming back. I want all of it, Victor. The good and the complicated and even the scary parts, I want you. Victor's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I've loved you since you stepped between that boy and his father 3 years ago. Loved you when you were invisible, when you were drowning, when you were someone who didn't even know my name. I've loved you through every moment since then, through watching you survive things that should have broken you, through seeing you choose kindness when cruelty would have been easier. And I'll keep loving you through whatever comes next. That's my promise. The one that matters more than all the others. He kissed her then, soft and deep, and full of everything they'd been dancing around for days. Lena kissed him back, tasting promise and future, and the strange, terrifying hope that maybe they could make this work. That maybe love was enough to build on, even in a world as dark as theirs. When they finally broke apart, the sun had set and stars were appearing in the darkening sky. So what happens now? Lena asked. Now we build that life. Together. Victor stood, pulled her up. But first, dinner. Maria will kill us both if we miss it again. They walked back to the house hand in hand, and Lena felt something shift inside her, something settling into place. This was home now. This house, this man, this strange found family of Maria and Marcus and everyone else in Victor's world who'd accepted her without question. Dinner was quiet, comfortable. Maria served pot roast and asked questions about the community center that Victor answered with enthusiasm Lena hadn't seen before. He had plans, detailed ones, thought out over days she hadn't known he was thinking about it. Programs for literacy and job training and childcare, partnerships with local schools, everything designed to give people options they didn't have before. When did you plan all this? Lena asked. Couldn't sleep most nights, so I worked. Victor's smile was sheepish. I wanted something good to come out of this situation. Wanted to prove to you, and maybe to myself, that I'm capable of building things instead of just destroying them. You've always been capable of that. You just needed a reason. You're my reason. He said it simply, like it was fact. Everything I do from now on, I do for you, for us. After dinner, they ended up in Victor's room. Their room now, Lena supposed, since she'd spent more nights there than in her own. She changed into pajamas while Victor showered, then curled up in his bed listening to the water run and feeling strangely content. He emerged 20 minutes later, hair damp, wearing sweatpants and nothing else. Lena tried not to stare at the scars scattered across his torso, evidence of a life lived dangerously, but Victor caught her looking. Occupational hazards, he said, climbing into bed beside her. This one's from a knife, that one's from glass, that one's from being stupid and thinking I was invincible when I was 19. They don't bother me. No? They're part of you, part of your story. Lena reached out, traced a thin white line across his ribs. I have scars too, just not visible ones. I know. Victor caught her hand, brought it to his lips. We're both damaged, but maybe that's okay. Maybe damaged people understand each other better than whole ones ever could. They lay there in comfortable silence, Lena's head on Victor's chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. She should have felt wrong about this, about sharing a bed with a man she'd known barely a week, about building a life with someone whose world was so different from anything she'd imagined. But it didn't feel wrong. It felt like finally being where she belonged. Victor? Thank you. For seeing me when I was invisible. For choosing me when you could have stayed in the shadows. For, her voice caught. For giving me a life worth living. His arms tightened around her. You gave me the same thing. A reason to be better. A future worth fighting for. A home instead of just a house. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. We saved each other, Lena. That's what love does. She fell asleep in his arms, safe and warm and loved for the first time since her parents died. And when morning came, she woke to find Victor already awake, watching her with an expression so soft it made her chest ache. Morning, he murmured. Morning? Lena stretched, realized she'd slept through the entire night without nightmares. What are you thinking about? The future. What I want to give you. What kind of life we can build together. He paused. I meant what I said about marriage, about wanting you to be mine permanently. But I'm not rushing you. We have time. How much time? As much as you need. A month, a year, 10 years? I'll wait. Victor's smile was gentle. But eventually, I want to marry you, Lena Park. Want to give you my name and my protection and everything I have. Want to build something permanent in a world where nothing usually lasts. Lena's heart hammered. Ask me. What? Ask me now, properly. Victor stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Lena, you don't have to. I'm not doing this because I feel obligated. I'm doing this because I want to, because I love you, and I want this life, and I don't need months or years to be sure. She sat up, faced him fully. So ask me. He searched her face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Finding none, something shifted in his expression. Wonder, joy, fear all mixed together. Lena Park, he said quietly, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me in this complicated, messy, sometimes violent world? Will you be my partner, my home, my reason for trying to be better than I am? Yes. The word came out steady, sure. Yes to all of it. Victor kissed her then, and it tasted like promise, like future, like two broken people finding wholeness in each other. The next few weeks passed in a blur of planning. Not just wedding planning, though Maria threw herself into that with enthusiasm that bordered on obsession, but life planning. The community center took shape faster than Lena expected. Victor called in favors, pushed contractors, threw money at problems until they disappeared. Within a month, the old bakery had been gutted and rebuilt into something bright and welcoming. Lena spent her days there, working with the architects and designers, making sure every detail was right, making sure it felt like a place where invisible people could be seen, where those drowning in debt could find help, where someone like her 6 months ago could find hope. Victor came by most afternoons, checking progress, making suggestions, watching Lena work with an expression that made her blush every time. He was different now, lighter somehow, like the weight he'd carried had lessened, like having someone to build for instead of just defend had given him purpose beyond survival. You're staring again, Lena said one afternoon, catching him watching from the doorway. I'm admiring my future wife, that's allowed. Your future wife is covered in paint and probably looks like a disaster. My future wife is beautiful, especially covered in paint. He crossed the room, pulled her close, despite her protests about ruining his suit. How's it looking? Good, really good. We'll be ready to open next month if everything stays on schedule. Lena looked around the space that had once been her prison, now transformed into something hopeful. I can't believe you did this. We did this? Together. That's how it works now. They were married 6 weeks after Victor's proposal, in a small ceremony at the estate. Just Maria, Marcus, and a handful of Victor's most trusted people. Lena wore a simple dress, white but not ostentatious, elegant but not flashy. Victor wore the same suit he'd worn to meet Chen, but he looked different in it now. Happier, whole. Maria cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus gave a toast that made everyone laugh and Lena blush. And when Victor kissed her as his wife for the first time, Lena tasted joy so pure it almost hurt. They didn't have a honeymoon, too much to do with the center opening, too many loose ends to tie up with Victor's business. But they didn't need one. Every morning waking up beside each other, every evening cooking dinner together, every quiet moment in the library or gardens, those were their honeymoon, their life. The community center opened 2 months after the wedding. Lena stood in front of the crowd gathered for the ribbon cutting, reporters, community members, city officials, and felt Victor's hand find hers. Nervous? He murmured. Terrified. You'll be perfect. Just speak from the heart. Lena stepped forward, looked at the building that had been built on the ashes of her worst moment, and found her voice. 6 months ago, I was drowning, she said quietly. Drowning in debt I didn't create, in a life I didn't choose, in a future that looked like nothing but survival. I was invisible, someone people looked through instead of at. I thought that was all I'd ever be, someone who didn't matter. She paused, met Victor's eyes. But someone saw me. Someone decided I mattered enough to fight for, to protect, to build a future with. And that changed everything. Not because he saved me, I'm not some damsel who needed rescuing, but because he gave me the space and safety to save myself, to become who I was always supposed to be. Lena turned back to the crowd. This center is for everyone who's ever felt invisible, everyone drowning in circumstances they didn't create, everyone who needs someone to see them, to give them options, to offer a hand up instead of pushing them down. This is proof that people matter, that even when the world tells you you're nothing, you're everything, you're seen, you're valued, you're home. She cut the ribbon, and the crowd applauded, and Victor pulled her close and whispered, I love you, against her hair. The center thrived. Within 6 months, they were running at capacity, literacy classes full, job training programs with waiting lists, the free meal service feeding over 100 people a day. Lena worked there 6 days a week, learning names and stories, seeing herself in every person who walked through the doors looking for hope. Victor scaled back his more dangerous operations, focused on legitimate businesses, became the kind of leader who built instead of destroyed. He still carried a gun, still made hard choices, still lived in a world where violence was always possible, but he came home every night, kept his promises, built the life they dreamed about in those spaces between chaos. A year after the wedding, Lena discovered she was pregnant. She told Victor in the library, their place, where so many important conversations had happened. He stared at her like she'd just told him they were moving to Mars. Are you sure? I took 3 tests, all positive. Lena's hands shook. I know we didn't plan this. I know it's fast, and we're still figuring things out, and Victor crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed her, deep and desperate and joyful. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. Lena laughed through sudden tears. Are you happy? Or terrified? Or both? All of it. Everything. He pulled back, his hands framing her face. I'm going to be a father. We're going to be parents. We're going to raise a child who never feels invisible, who always knows they're loved, who has the childhood neither of us got. You're going to be a great father. I'm going to try. That's all I can promise. To try to be better than mine was to give our kid everything I didn't have, to make sure they know, his voice broke, to make sure they know they matter from day one. Their daughter was born 8 months later, on a spring morning when the gardens were in full bloom. They named her Elena, after Lena's mother, and because it meant light. Victor held her with shaking hands, this tiny person who was half him and half Lena, and cried openly. She's perfect, he whispered. You're both perfect. We're both exhausted, Lena corrected, but she was smiling. But yeah, she's pretty amazing. Maria was waiting outside the hospital room, and when she saw the baby, she cried harder than anyone. She has your eyes, she told Lena. Then to Victor. And your stubbornness, I'm sure. Let's hope not, Victor said, but he was grinning. They took Elena home to the estate, to the nursery Victor had spent months perfecting. That first night, they took turns holding her, walking her, just watching her sleep. Lena kept thinking about the girl she'd been 2 years ago, broken, invisible, drowning, and couldn't believe this was her life now. Couldn't believe she got this happiness after so much pain. What are you thinking? Victor asked from where he stood with Elena against his shoulder. That we made it. Through everything, Chen and the war and figuring out how to be together, we made it, and now we have her. Lena moved to stand beside him, looking down at their sleeping daughter. I never thought I'd have this. Family that chose me. A home that felt safe, a future worth fighting for. You gave me the same things, a reason to be better, a life beyond business, a family I actually want to protect instead of just feeling obligated to. Victor shifted Elena carefully, then wrapped his free arm around Lena. I love you, both of you, more than anything. We love you too. They stood there in the nursery, the three of them, while the world outside continued turning. Somewhere in the city, people were fighting their own battles, drowning in their own debts, feeling invisible in their own lives. But in this house, in this moment, there was only love, only family, only the impossible future they'd built from the wreckage of their pasts. The community center celebrated its second anniversary the month Elena turned 1. Lena gave a speech holding her daughter, talking about hope and second chances and the power of being seen. She looked out at the crowd, hundreds of people whose lives had been changed by the programs they'd built, and felt Victor's hand on the small of her back. This is what you gave me, she told him that night after Elena was asleep. Not just safety or protection or even love. You gave me purpose. The chance to help people the way you helped me. To be the person who sees others when they're invisible. You gave me the same thing. Before you, I was just surviving. Going through motions, building an empire that meant nothing because I had no one to share it with. You made it all mean something. Victor pulled her close. You made me mean something. They made love that night slowly, carefully, rediscovering each other in the way young parents did. Stolen moments between feedings, exhaustion-tinged tenderness, love that had been tested and proven stronger for it. And afterward, lying tangled together in the dark, Lena thought about the spilled cup that had started everything. The bleeding hand. The stranger who'd refused to ignore her existence. I'm glad you were watching me, she said quietly. Victor laughed softly. That's still creepy, you know. Maybe, but I'm still glad. If you hadn't been paying attention, hadn't noticed when I needed help. Someone else would have, eventually, but his arms tightened around her. But I'm glad it was me. Glad I got to be the one who saw you first, who got to build this life with you. Even if I had to stalk you for 3 years to get here. We're never telling Elena about the stalking. Agreed. We'll just say it was love at first sight. Was it? Victor was quiet for a moment. Yeah, it was. I just didn't know what to do about it for a while. Didn't think I deserved you. Still don't most days. Good thing I chose you anyway. Best choice you ever made. Second best, Lena corrected. First was getting in your car that morning. Everything else followed from that. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Elena woke crying an hour later, Victor got up with her, walking her around the room while singing off-key. Lena watched from bed, this man who commanded respect and fear from everyone else in his world, reduced to putty by a 1-year-old with his eyes and her smile. This was their life now, messy and complicated and sometimes still touched by the darkness of Victor's world, but also full of light, full of love, full of the family they'd chosen and built and fought for. 3 years after Lena first got in Victor's car, they stood in the gardens at sunset, watching Elena chase butterflies while Maria called warnings about not trampling the flowers. The community center was expanding, adding programs faster than they could staff them. Victor's legitimate businesses were thriving. The past, Chen, the bakery, the debts, felt like stories from someone else's life. Do you ever regret it? Victor asked quietly. Choosing this life? Choosing me? Lena turned to look at him, this man who'd seen her when she was invisible, who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself, who'd given her the space to become who she was always meant to be. Not once, she said. Not ever. Even with the danger, the violence, everything you've had to accept about what I do? Even with all of that. Because you're not just what you do, Victor. You're the man who turns bakeries into community centers, who cries when his daughter smiles, who keeps every promise he makes. Lena took his hand. You're the man I love, and I'd choose you 1,000 times over. Victor kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Elena was tugging on Lena's dress, demanding to be picked up. Victor scooped her up instead, lifting her high enough to make her shriek with laughter. Again, she demanded. Again, Daddy. He obliged, and Lena watched them play and felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for years. This was home, not the estate or the center or any physical place, but this, these people, this love. She'd been invisible once, drowning in a life she didn't choose, but someone had seen her, had pulled her from the water, had taught her that being seen wasn't the same as being owned, that accepting help wasn't the same as giving up control, that love could exist even in the darkest corners of the world. And now she got to pay it forward. Every person who walked through the center's doors, she saw them, gave them options, helped them find solid ground. Because she knew what it was like to drown, knew what it was like to be invisible. And she knew, more than anything, what it was like to be saved by someone who refused to look away. That evening, after Elena was asleep and the house had settled into quiet, Victor found Lena in the library. She was curled up in the window seat, looking out at the stars. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, sitting beside her. "Just thinking about how far we've come, how different everything is from 2 years ago. Any regrets? I already told you, none. But Victor?" She turned to face him. "Thank you for everything. For seeing me, for fighting for me, for building this life with me, for being exactly who I needed when I needed it most. You did the same for me." His hand found hers in the dark. "We saved each other, remember? That's what love does." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars, thinking about the future they'd build and the past they'd survived. And when they finally went to bed, Lena fell asleep knowing she was exactly where she belonged. Seen, protected, loved, home. The girl who'd been invisible had become a woman who helped others be seen. The man who'd lived in shadows had built something lasting in the light. And together, they'd created a life worth living. Messy and complicated and sometimes still touched by darkness, but theirs. Completely, perfectly, impossibly theirs. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.